Daniel's here. Genetic unionization, structuring, social accountability, correctivity, homeostasis, thus autonomy and sovereignty for European peoples, genus and species, coordination of coalitions in human and pervasive ecology. I'm doing a stream this morning, primarily because I said that I'd do one at this time. Actually, I said that I'd do one yesterday morning as well, which makes it all the more important in the name of continuity to keep my word to some extent. Not sure if I'll leave it up. We'll see how it goes. We'll definitely be talking to Per Nordin on Monday, that is tomorrow or Tuesday, hopefully with Mirth Baron and Snorkelblog. Hopefully they'll be able to join us then, if not this morning, later. It's not morning snorkel time. Snorkel time is sometime late afternoon right now. One thing that I need to emphasize in advocating left ethnonationalism as a concept of radical unionization, social organization, advocacy, and coalition alignment, beneath the red cape characterology of the quote left, we see this social organizing underpinning that is praxis. Crucially, unlike the red cape misrepresentations, it is not sheer narrative devoid of reality testing, truth, free from the necessity of adherence to nature, facts, and some principles of morality, but rather that those right-wing objectivist quests are feedback to be gauged against the calibration of our praxis, our union, as it were. You'll notice that in all these right-wingers, dissident writers, who are or disinformation agents who are proposing a characterology of the left as a red caping of it in order to dangle before people. They're always trying to say that it's devoid of reality testing, of truth, of adherence to laws of nature, and that's their distorted misrepresentation of and weaponized perhaps anti-European representation of the left. What you'll notice, in order to maintain that characterology and their kind of popular position as granted by the powers that be, like even in the most recent Praise of Folly podcast with Tim and Keith Preston, and his other two guests that he has there, that when they talk about the left, it will never be a left in the sense of a unionization, and unionizations even. They'll never talk about left in the sense of a unionization of our people. In other words, our leftist underpinning. Notice that Keith Preston was, to him a union is something that's lorded over by the IWW, the International Workers of the World, which is clearly a Marxist thing, having nothing to do with concern for our European people. He said, "Oh, I noticed so many years ago how they were getting into all this horrible PC identity politics." Like he's so ahead of our game. Well, he's not, and for whatever interesting reason, doesn't care about social accountability to our people. And that's part of the reason why anarchism as a rule is so disgusting. But anyway, and I'm picking on Keith Preston a bit because he has been one who's towing the line of trying to maintain the misrepresentation or representation of the left, let's say, as nothing that could be in regard to a unionization of European peoples per se. He's trying to get a bit particular about how hypocritical these new leftists are because they don't look after the economic concerns of the white working class. Well, it's not strictly when this platform talks about left ethnonationalism, it's not exactly, not for the most part, economic in emphasis either. It's mainly about our people. Because we're going by the left word in left ethnonationalism, we need to emphasize that is to underscore the social cohesion in its depth grammar and its pro-social, non-supremacist, non-imperialist aspect. So we need to emphasize that we're not communists, about the strictly about the working class, whomever comprises them, and we are for private property and free enterprise within reason. It's more of a social matter than an economic matter. That is to say. Okay. Interestingly, we have no viewers yet. Again, that's to be expected because it's important. You could expect that if it's important that WN are going to be behind the curve. But lucky you, I'm probably going to leave this up so you can attend later and glean what you need instead of I would call it titillation, but I don't. Speaking for myself, anyway, I find I'm more and more bored by these, or dissatisfied, I should say. Bored too, but bored and dissatisfied. More like dissatisfied by these dissident right podcasts and kind of more mainstream rightist podcasts. They're not satisfying in terms of providing what we need. Okay. So fights, so to speak, have continued over at majority rights with regard to with Bowery and, well, as for the time being, guest worker has receded into the background. So where he's around, it's going to be a fight because he's not going to grant much of anything to anybody. But what I need to comment on the most recent exchange with Bowery. Before that, saying is similar, even worse than with Guest Worker. It doesn't. It's even winning a fight with them, which I have been doing. I'm sure is disconcerting because you're dealing with people who, like all of us, not only have a chip on their shoulder, but are high IQ. I mean, and therefore it can be a bit intimidating. Having said that, it had to be done, and part of the reason I feel that I've been prevailing in this argument is I'm blessed with the time. I'm not really distracted by other matters, but also, but much more important than that, with an honest concern for our people, and therefore where I am, for example, describing how postmodernity is supposed to be applied in our interests. I'm really doing that. I'm really showing that. I'm not trying to fluff off or slove off Dorita's misdirection or some kind of nonsense like that. Or, which, people who don't, Bowery, who apparently doesn't have time or an inclination to care about what I'm actually saying. Apparently he's just going to presume that I'm saying the same old stuff. But of course, the same old misrepresentations, what I call red capes, coming out of academia and the humanities in particular. But it's really, it's much too important to back off, because the reality is that if he cares about our people, GW cares about our people, should never have been looking upon what I'm saying and doing as mutually exclusive to their concerns. Quite to the contrary. And not even secondary. It's actually preliminary, more fundamental on a philosophical level. Okay, so let me head on over to majority rights, because I think that it could be obstructive, not only in the obstruction that I've been up against, but also in having to overcome this obstruction, to be more clear and sharp about what it is that I'm getting at. It should be informative as well. Okay. Sort of James wants to draw me into discussion of his sortocracy idea. It was apparently not always he absorbed in this idea, which is geared toward a way of conflict resolution as he sees as he sees it, as necessarily being. And I'm afraid he's looking upon it as his project as all important, and an understanding of what I'm saying is not particularly important. And I'm satisfied to go beyond my subjectivity to say that that is wrong, period. The things that I'm saying are very important beyond my subjective concern. Now, he took great umbrage to my calling pairwise duels goofy. You know, that's a part of his sortocracy scheme, unfortunately. So he's I guess from his perspective, trying to bring me to a more refined understanding as to why he would maintain the concept of pairwise duels as integral. Now, as I've said, when I called it goofy, he sort of changed the terms of pairwise duels and called it, no, if you're going to call the state of nature goofy, well, I'm not sure why pairwise duels would be synonymous with the state of nature. And to the extent that it is, which certainly applied to human concerns, it would be, I would maintain, a natural fallacy going way, way back. You know, he says he's very proud of the fact that he takes his chain of logic back millions of years. I believe it, to the very origins of sexual differentiation. And then he wonders why I call him absurd. But anyway, where was I? Yes, pairwise duels, and he's saying that my calling this goofy is tantamount to calling the state of nature goofy. And that's ridiculously sensitive, of course, and also is, even if it did take us back to a kind of subhuman nature, you have to ask if that's a good thing, and if that's going to necessarily cause us to reemerge in a better human direction. It's very speculative, to say the least. But to use his criteria of sortocracy, first of all, if that's what he wants to do, and he can get people to go along with it, I doubt that he's going to be able to get very many people to go along with that. Then he can sort that way. Find a county somewhere in Montana or Iowa or Canada or wherever, where people want to do that. I won't bother you. Anyway, because he wants to try to get me to help him to understand how, quote, well considered and normal the idea of pairwise duels is, and not goofy. He was so insulted that I would call it goofy. James says, Daniels, under what conditions do you think sortocracy's rules invoke pairwise duels? And at this point, I care to show him that I understand it. I understand his basic idea. So I said, presumably, after well inculcated understanding of what consent to be among a community entails, and allegations of transgression are brought before a jury, innocent until proven guilty. If a guilty verdict is reached, the transgressor is subject to duel to the death with the plaintiff sovereign. If a shielded person, there's two kinds of people in Bowery society, sovereigns and shielded. Sovereigns have agency and responsibility, and shielded persons are like the young, the old, the weak, and females in his scheme are supposed to be shielded people too. If a shielded person, say a woman, is making the charges, the accusations, she's not likely to bring them lightly, as she is risking the life of the sovereign man she most depends upon, loves. I thought there was a bit of fairly significant cleverness there, in that the concept would certainly mitigate heavily against false rape accusations. For example, if you were putting your father or the man you love and depend upon as the one who has to take care of the rapist, because if he has to go to a pairwise duel with the rapist, then you're putting him at risk, right? So you're not likely a woman's not likely to make a false rape accusation. It's kind of interesting, therefore I'd say twist on it. But nevertheless, I'm humoring Bowery, though he's not aware of that yet. Then he responds. The only rule that might be confused with your interpretation is rule number 5. So again, I'll ask, under what conditions do you think Sortocracy's rule number 5 is invoked? So he wants me to get involved in his different rules and his Sortocracy thing. He was about promoting it. And just let me say there that what he's failing to understand is that I never prevented him from promoting his idea of Sortocracy. And the fact that I would I tried to forefront him in the DNA nations concept, would have put him in position to promote his full concept of Sortocracy, including pairwise duels to his heart's content. So it's all the less reason why he should have been antagonistic and opposed to me. But the thing is, he's what's really bad about what he's doing is he's trying to make me a parrot of his ideas. He wants me to be a yes man to the full gamut of his ideas, even when I think that they're stupid, like pairwise duels. Let me carry on. So he asks, under what conditions do you think Sortocracy's rule number 5 is invoked? And I say, the offender will not leave, and no other state wants to take the convicted offender either. Okay? And so James answers, exiled offender, yes. Convicted isn't used in the rules. Okay, whatever. And he says, keep in mind there are no human rights. Like I didn't know that. E.g. no 14, well, not in his Sortocracy either. He's specifying it. E.g. no 14th Amendment, other than those enumerated in the rules. So some states will have arbitrarily harsh conditions imposed on arbitrary people, up to and including voluntary slavery, hazardous work, etc. So what percentage of the population would end up being excluded from all states? He asks. I answer, if I were to venture some answer, would that result in your coming off your high horse and getting yourself and McDonald to help with the DNA Nations project, of which there's no good reason why either of you should not help? The answer is no. So why bother? Well, by the same token, I must recognize that it won't do any good to call pairwise duels goofy when another term for this unnecessary nonsense would be still more appropriate. Something like STEM nerd retardation. And not surprisingly, that offends James. He says, I thought we were making reasonable progress toward mutual understanding up until that response. Why would you demand prior commitment from me to supporting something I don't understand before pursuing mutual understanding? These are largely projections on his part. You know, he's the one who expects a commitment. His, the full scheme of sortocracy, including pairwise duels in the woods and whatnot. Anyway, so let me move on. Like I said, he said, why would you demand prior commitment for me to support something I don't understand before pursuing mutual understanding? I say, you don't understand that 1,200 word document that's been sitting here for 10 years? No, it's true. In a way, apparently he didn't understand. If he expects me, if he thinks that I was trying to use that document as a means of conflict resolution, and he's insisted on looking at it that way, maybe that would be why he didn't understand it. But there's nothing in there that proposes it as a document of conflict resolution. I thought when he said, show me how you can come up with a better means of conflict resolution than this, I'm thinking he's just being an obnoxiously competitive fool, which he is. Not a fool, not obnoxiously competitive jerk, which he is. He shouldn't be competing against me in this war. It's not about this. The DNA Nations document is about sorting out who we are. We'll get to that. So I say, you don't understand that 1,200 words. Excuse me. You don't understand those 1,200 words that have been sitting there for 10 years? Soren Renner was first to edit it. It was shown to him, and then to you, to ensure that it would not insult you. I remember Soren wanted to check on that. We wanted to make sure that this wasn't insulting Bowery, stepping on his toes in a way that he found unacceptable. He wasn't using his name there. What was I expecting, hoping from you and McDonald, who gave it the second edit? I was expecting, hoping that you'd encourage him to run it at TOO, most recently, at the Occidental Observer. I never claimed it to be a means of conflict resolution. I never claimed it to be a means of conflict resolution. You said incorrectly that I made that claim. You said that I claimed it as a means of conflict resolution. Never, ever did I do that. And for some reason, expected that I should come up with a novel means, according to you. Now, in talking to him, I remember him saying, he used the word, show me how you'd operationalize this. And then I said, well, like, the ethno-state prescribes mutual destruction of nuclear war, for example. Anyway, the mutual exclusivity of your proposed requirement didn't make sense 10 years ago and it doesn't make now, why I have to come up with a novel means of conflict resolution in order for you to, in this document, in order for you to cooperate with it. That's not what it's about. and that was Bowery's objection, okay, apparently. And Kevin McDonald, if Kevin McDonald, on the other hand, doesn't do it because he requires a sign up, then people can do it at my website. It's prepared for that now. If he thinks the DNA nations, if he thinks it should be better somehow, that is to say, the sign up more secure, whatever, then commentators at the Occidental Observer can make some suggestions. And Bowery says, he responds, "Don't pretend to be reciprocal here, Daniels. I did not demand as a condition of my effort to reach mutual understanding with you about Sartocracy that you commit to supporting Sartocracy." That's not what I said. I mean, that's what I think now, but what I said actually was that he made the requirement of my competing with him for a more clever idea than Sartocracy in terms of conflict resolution, negotiation, whatever. The requirement to his cooperation with me, and that remains true. And then he says, "Since you have now basically run away from that dialogue, I'll offer my diagnosis. Your repeated insult was about to be exposed by your own answer as, at the very best, a petty critique in the mode of the culture of critique." He cannot get over that what I'm doing is different than the red capes of the red cape misrepresentations of the humanities. Same as with GW. It's like this boomeritis. It's a STEM boomeritis where they're unfamiliar with the humanities and they're like the good that is accrued to them from modernity and their STEM projects profiting from that, and it would be convenient to them to see the humanities and as represented by the red capes, what I say is misrepresentations of the kosher folks, as the great ogre, and their autobiography very much invested in that misrepresentation of the humanities. So they're so invested in it that when I explain to them how these postmodern concepts of the humanities are supposed to be used, they don't want to hear it. Because then they and their singular way of doing things is not the only important thing, and so on. Their petty reasoning is not satisfied. And so I answered, he said, so I respond to him, "Don't pretend to be reciprocal here, Daniels." Let's see how we're doing with our, I have something called Kavian Corner. That's probably Claire Call. Yeah, has to be. He said, "Don't pretend to be reciprocal here, Daniels." And so I say to him, "Why can't you ever respond honestly? I am, quote, pretending to be reciprocal because I do not treat you and your words as if they are the only thing that matters. After you have ignored this project for 10 years, tried to avoid it by saying that it was 32,000 words when in fact it's 1,200 words, saying that it does not answer some claim, that is to say conflict resolution, that I never made. I never proposed it as conflict resolution. Tried to say that I ruined majority rights. Of course, I made it enormously better in many ways. And further, ignore things that I say which are gleaned from hard experience, inferred and cultivated from those who actually know what they're talking about. Important things. And then he says, I did not demand as a condition of my effort to reach mutual understanding with you about certocracy that you commit to supporting certocracy. I said, that's not what I said. You said, in your absurdly, gratuitously competitive way, show me that you can do something better than certocracy. Make it, the DNA nations, operative by offering some means of conflict resolution. For example, the mutually assured destruction of nuclear war that is proposed by, what's his name? I think his name is Ireland in the ethno-state. That's just an example. It doesn't have to be that one. Wilmot Robertson, his real name was Ireland in the ethno-state, apparently. And that's a pretty good book. He surprisingly, he goes well into the idea of human ecology, and it's impressive. But I think that Bowery thought that that wasn't where I came through human and pervasive ecology from. I came from other sources. And so I say, I did not run away from dialogue. I'll make the last comment to repeat and elaborate a bit about the duels. I won't get lured further into your shit where you want yes men, even where what you say is stupid. Remember when, for just one example, you said, no women like my article, sex is sacrament, sex is celebration. You actually said that. He claims to know every woman and their opinion. That's stupid. And furthermore, the article proposes that there are many different ways to look upon sex. Some, I maintain, are better than others, of course, but and are necessary for a stable society, but or some option. Other options are not precluded. And it's such a wide palette there that to say no women like it is absurd for that reason, if no other. And that's just one example of his treatment of that article, of why I hold your opinion, James, of my work in low esteem. And yet, you want me to go into fine detail about your absurd communion with what you believe to be God or whatever, in his Cartesian anxiety up there in pairwise dual heaven or whatever. He says, your repeated insult was about to be exposed by your own answer as, at the very best, a petty critique in the mode of the culture of critique. And I say, this is projection. You, James, were about to be exposed as trying to enforce a petty expression of modern culture, as if there are not other better ways than pairwise duels, even if the goal is to enhance individual integrity and sexual differentiation. If you're going to bother with jury trials, if the verdict is guilty and death is the penalty, then get it over with. Why not get it over with? No point risking a good man by offering a duel. Right? If the verdict is not death, and a pairwise challenge is offered because the person is thought to deserve a chance at proving themselves in a challenge and participating in community, then make the competition non-lethal and the winning and losing the pairwise duel a matter of greater reward, lesser reward, or penalty. Otherwise, you're just selecting for the nerd capacities for ingenious lethal battle. A pretty bad thing to quantify when not tempered by other qualities, while potentially killing off other, perhaps more beneficial qualities. I don't want to dialogue more about your shit. I have to my satisfaction. I have what is necessary in a positive sense from the Sotocracy idea. You are positioned to promote your details if you decide to help encourage McDonald to post it. Don't expect me to promote your stuff. Pairwise duels, shield maidens, and all. I've done enough to promote you and paid a price for it, getting associated with your absurdity. You have done nothing for the DNA Nations project, nor for me. There are aspects to your project that are not to my taste. And I want to qualify. Barry has several really good ideas. I'm not trying to be dismissive of those. There are aspects to your project, James, that are not to my taste. I'm sure repugnant to others as well, and which I simply find wrong. You have been insulting to my ideas. I mean, Dee has in many ways, and for a long time, not paying attention to them either. Like GW, never trying to reconcile them where you should have, and not see them as mutually exclusive, which you did. Whereas I am sure that they are sound and very important, my ideas. I do not care to argue with you more or engage in what you call, quote, dialogue. It is a spiderweb for your self-promotion. You were given an opportunity to promote your Sotocracy project yourself. I forefronted you in the DNA Nations project, but even that's not enough. Similar as with GW, everything is supposed to be about your goddamn self. You're dishonest, and you are the one being evasive. Okay. James responds, when I say I don't understand, even after 10 years, a mere 1,200 words, he puts it in quotes. That's what it is. How many times do you want me to do a word count on it? It's 1,200 words. That presumably defines what the Euro DNA Nations is all about. I don't know. Why does he say this? I mean, in the sense of what you are attempting to do by contrasting it with your portrayal of my ideas. You could merely have stated, and I'm quoting him, sign the Euro DNA Nations petition to express your wish to live in a nation that excludes from its territory persons not of indigenous European extraction. Again, I'm very surprised that he would say such a stupid thing. This simple and clear call to action doesn't imply anything about my ideas, which you have characterized as goofy. If you're going to call my ideas goofy and yet want me to support your characterization of my ideas implicit in the quote 1,200 words, why does it put quotes around it? That's what it is. Then it should come as no surprise that I express a lack of comprehension. Just cut out the reference to my ideas, which you have mischaracterized, and focus on what you are asking people to do. And I say, James, I'm starting to realize that you are absurd. Let me explain why I think so, given your latest impervious response. And this is what in communicology we call impervious responding. He doesn't really respond to what you're saying. It goes into some tangent. I quote him. James says, when I say I don't understand, even after 10 years, a mere quote 1,200 words, I don't know why he puts quotes on it, it is 1,200 words, that presumably defines what the Euro-DNA nations is all about. I ask him, why does it presume what the Euro-DNA nations is all about? What I sought in this insistence was for your help in getting that document attention and support, preferably by encouraging MacDonald to publish it at the Occidental Observer, and then you're helping with its processing. It says, I mean it in the sense of what you are attempting to do by contrasting it with your portrayal of my ideas. And I said, I have not attempted to get the document attended to by contrasting it to your ideas. That is what you have done, turned it into a competition. You say, you could have merely stated, sign the Euro-DNA Nations petition to express your wish to live in a nation that excludes from its territory persons not of indigenous European extraction. And I say, no, exclamation point. That would not curate, catalog, and set in line unionization and coalition building of European DNA in quantity and quality. I can't believe you would ignore and try to dismiss fundamentally important concerns in so trivializing a way. Remember when you gave me that little Occam's razor laugh when saying that with your autocracy, then we wouldn't need your DNA nations concept. It's like this kind of glee and satisfaction. No, we don't need you then. I'm thinking, I was like, why we take satisfaction in excluding something so important, which, by the way, isn't included in his autocracy concept. Anyway, well, it isn't true, and the perverted little laugh was an expression of your hyper-competitiveness, which would cast important projects aside for the sake of your esteem, apparently, and your pet projects, which you apparently consider the only important matter. So, like I said, like GW, he wants to apply Occam's razor not just to superfluous concepts, but to any concept that from another, like me, namely, which is beyond the purview of his scientism. Basically, he wants to apply a concept, Occam's razor, to me and to anything that I can say. He wants to exclude it. And then we don't need your DNA Nations project. And then he says, that would be a simple and clear call to action. Sign the Euro-DNA Nations petition to express your wish to live in a nation that excludes from its territory persons not of indigenous European extraction. This will be a simple and clear call to action. And I'm surprised at this. I have to tell him, because it's plain. It's not a call to action that is being sought with the DNA nations. It is primarily a means to account for, look after, and sort our European genetics in quantity and quality. It's more of like a means of accounting for our genetic kinds. And then he says, that doesn't imply anything about my ideas, which you have characterized as goofy. I had the nerve to call pairwise duals goofy, right? And so he uses the word ideas, plural. I call all of his ideas goofy because I call pairwise duals goofy. So I say, I did not characterize the body of your ideas, to use a plural form, as goofy. I said that pairwise duals are goofy, is goofy. And let me be more clear, it is more like stupid STEM retardation. And he says, if you're going to call my ideas goofy, I did not call your ideas goofy. I called pairwise duals goofy. You tried to change the terms and call it a state of nature to try to make it sound elegant. And then you want me to support your characterization of my ideas? I said, you keep saying this untrue line that I characterize your ideas, plural, as goofy. The one time when I first used the word goofy in regard to pairwise dual was only further up this thread. And I said, include your notion of sortocracy from the start. So you could have promoted your as the in being forefronted. You could have promoted your sortocracy concept as you like. I just said that, I incorporated it without the goofy pairwise dual bit. Don't expect me to try to sell that that clunker. And he says, implicit in your quote 1,200 words, that's what it is. He keeps putting quotes around it as if it's not 1,200 words, as opposed to his claim that it was 32,000 words. Then it should come as no surprise that I express a lack of comprehension. Just cut out reference to my ideas, which you have mischaracterized, and focus on what you are asking people to do. I say, I do not mischaracterize the sortocratic matter of voting with feet, right to exclude, and so on. But I will indeed cut mention of you out of further instantiations of the paper. I'm tired of your incorrigibility, hypersensitivity, dishonesty, scientism, and hypercompetitiveness. I've had it with you. Goodbye. Try not to talk about me either. Well, to no surprise, it doesn't quite end it, and this diatribe is almost over for whom it may concern. Okay, so James says, I've repeatedly stated that I don't understand DNA Nation, so I can't very well say that there is no need for it. What I have said is that whatever DNA Nation's proprietarianism, CTMUism, etc. may be, none of which I understand to the degree to render judgments about them, they are accommodated within sortocracy by the simple expedient of providing territory with the minimal additional constraints via individuals who do not understand and agree to their terms. Likewise, since Daniels, who presumably is no longer going to respond since he considers me absurd, has demonstrated he did not understand sortocracy, he can't very well understand the reason for rule number 5's inclusion of mutual hunt in nature as the place of ultimate exile after all other options for mutually consenting territorial occupation by an individual have been denied that individual. Not understanding the reason for this, he can't very well pass judgment on it either as a single idea, nor as integral to the body of my ideas. Suffice it to say, it is integral to those ideas, just as any philosophy of civil society must be founded on dispute processing, he bolds, founded on dispute processing, and therefore how it deals with those who will not comply with its processes. It's quite understandable that he might find the very idea of mutual hunt in nature to be so goofy that there is no conceivable body of ideas to which it is integral without those ideas also being goofy. But he's not going to be able to pick apart my individual integrity as reflected in the integrity of my ideas by taking out of context the idea and calling it goofy. This is all quite reminiscent of those who take one look at anything remotely resembling separatism and immediately start squawking about white supremacy. Oh my God, that's totally ridiculous. It's simply moronic. It is far worse than that. It's a mendacious attempt to form a mob of leering morons to attack something that is quite defensible in rational and moral terms, and even open warfare terms, but not in terms of quote, civil society's coddling of such vermin. Now, where do you begin with this colossal shit that he just took? I say, Bally, my adjourning with you was conditional upon your not misrepresenting me. As you have done that, I will respond. You say that you repeatedly stated that you don't understand the DNA nations. You have said this only a few times and have done so only recently. The concept is very simple. It's based on the old Orion principle, our race is our nation, Our race is our nation idea. Wherever your genetics go, you carry your nation with you. Since, presumably, we all care about preserving our broad genus European and species-specific kinds of European, the project can begin to curate, so to speak, the numbers and qualities of our various kinds through subscription. This would be on the order of preserving endangered species and looking after our health, but for us rather than just for animals. Citizenship of genetics is the essence of exclusion and inclusion, not land boundaries. And with subscribers unionized, so to speak, we may coordinate worldwide, and then we might cooperate to whatever extent we may with those who stake out land claims as sacrosanct territories will be necessary, even small claims to begin, and then work with others who might hope to retake the ancient European nations as predominated by their European kind. Ultimately, the genetic union of unions may coordinate economically to hold up, for example, to the growing power of China and, for example, to fund exorbitant projects such as space exploration. This all is obvious in the 1,200 words. You could not have made the slightest effort to understand. It is about coordination and accounting for our genetic kinds to look after our survival. You're trying to liken it to Doolittle's Baroque nonsense or other shit is an asshole move. He says, going back to his little statement there, saying that the DNA nations idea is accommodated within autocracy by a simple expedient of providing territory with the minimal additional constraints via individuals who do understand and agree to the terms. And I say, no. If you were to say that your autocracy idea could be coordinated with the DNA nations, I can agree. But as you try to say, it makes it redundant. He's trying, like I said, he's trying to apply a Commons razor to me with incredible obnoxiousness on the order of GW. Just wants to make other people unnecessary and himself the only thing that matters. But as you try to say, it makes it redundant and unnecessary. That is dead wrong, because the idea of collecting our genetic kinds and coordinating on the basis of our European DNA is not conducted within your discussion. Let me repeat that, because the idea of collecting our genetic kinds and coordinating on the basis of our European DNA is not conducted within your discussion. He says, likewise, since Daniels, who presumably is no longer going to respond since he considers me absurd. Yes, I consider you absurd. But I will respond if you continue to attempt to misrepresent me. Now, this is just this is a thread of his absurdity that goes back to wanting to treat, of natural fallacy, of wanting to treat male species competition in times well before human evolution, or to model, according to him, an ideal of human behavior. It's scientism, in a word. And I consider that absurd, yes. And that's right along with so many of his kind of welling modernist absurdities, like trying to forbid me from using the word Cartesian, as if that's something terrible. And I show him, well, then I'm not supposed to comment, or I'm not supposed to take Heidegger seriously when he says that Kant was still Cartesian. I'm supposed to believe that he's talking nonsense. So winning the argument isn't going to do any good, because he's not going to acknowledge it. Some ego problem or something. You can't stand corrected. Anyway, that's so you're dealing with a person who's got at very best an absurd streak. And he says, he's demonstrated he does not understand sartocracy. I say, I do understand what I need from it and what is necessary from it. And he goes on, he can't very well understand the reason why for rule number 5's inclusion of mutual hunt in nature as the place of ultimate exile after all other options for mutually consenting territorial occupation by an individual have been denied that individual. Now I tell him, you are free to have all those who agree with you clamor to your assistance in rule number 5. What is it? The mutual hunt. I'm not interested. And he goes on to say, not understanding the reason for this, he can't very well pass judgment on it either as a single idea, nor as integral to the body of my ideas. Now I say, I already did pass judgment. You're free to try to sell your experiment to others. No sale here. And he says, suffice it to say, it is integral to those ideas, just as any philosophy of civil society must be founded on dispute processing, and therefore how it deals with those who will not comply with its processes. And I say, while dispute processing is fairly contemporaneous to establishing who we are, it is not quite a chicken and egg conundrum. Sorting who we are is a bit prior. Dispute processing emerges from there. He goes on, it's quite understandable that he might find the very idea of mutual hunt in nature to be so goofy that there's no conceivable body of ideas to which it is integral without those ideas also being goofy. But he's not going to be able to pick apart my individual integrity as reflected in the integrity of my idea by taking out of context one idea and calling it goofy. And I say, oh, the horror. I called James Pairwise Dual idea goofy. What a baby boomer indeed. Baby boomer. Wow, wow. You called my idea goofy. I already did pick your fucking Pairwise Dual idea apart in comment 187. I'll repeat that to conclude. And I've acknowledged that goofy was the wrong word. Idiotic, retarded STEM, sci-fi novel nonsense that who will subscribe to? I don't know. That's more like it. Go sell it to whomever you might. You think that you have not been insulting to me, and he has been. And many, many times. If you don't want me to, and just broadly, I mean, I know that I have several extremely important ideas to my platform, and yet, is he going to acknowledge anything? He's going to sweep the whole platform aside. Try to. He won't be able to because it's the one that holds up in the end. And so I say, if you don't want me to defend myself here, then don't try to lure me into your jive. You have all these people lined up to attend to your pairwise dual concept. Engage with them. That's the LOL because, I don't know anybody who agrees with it. And if there are, well, you know where to go. Go to Majority Rights and discuss it with Bowery. But I want to repeat, when it comes to pairwise duals, the fundamental absurdity is that he proposes a jury trial first. So the first absurdity is that if you're going to find someone guilty, and you're going to give them the death penalty, because he proposes pairwise duels as a duel to the death, and you're going to give them the death penalty, get it over with. Why not just get it over with? Kill them. Give them the death penalty. I'm not against the death penalty for certain things. On the other hand, if you think that they deserve a chance to survive as a worthy contributor to the society somehow, or someone to coordinate with the society, why make it a duel to the death? And why risk someone from your community? Why risk their life? That is to say, if you want to test, come up with a victor in certain skills, why not set up tests which are not lethal but result in the victor getting better rewards, the loser lesser rewards, if not penalties. And that way you haven't killed off the loser in a case where you see fit, but the whole concept of both parties being given a chance, because they're apparently not immediately worth death. So why not make it non-lethal and not risk too narrow a means of selection for qualities that, and the guy who loses the the nerdish battle to the death may in fact have other qualities which, in the broad scheme of things, in the ecology of things, are even more important. I would, matter of fact, I would guess that's probably the truth. You're selecting for people who are very clever killers and not necessarily very balanced individuals. So, I mean, looked at that way, I would say that pairwise duels is, goofy is really too soft a word. Okay. So that's bringing that conflict up to date. I think that's Claire. Claire Claus, stop trying to promote yourself through my stuff. I have to correct. Claire Claus, I consider your secular Quran idea to be totally idiotic. I see you as an incredibly arrogant, not an imposter, well, she's that too, but what's the word? Damn it, proposer? This case is preposterous indeed. It's, don't try to promote yourself through my work and glom onto my work. You have nothing to do with it. I found it really absurd. Zeda's said to me that she doesn't take me seriously because I talk with Claire Call. It's like, have you listened to my discussions with Claire? Or when I comment on her in retrospect afterward? It's obvious that it should be obvious to Zed as that I don't take Claire seriously. She's just sort of like a stand-in interlocutor, provisional foil she's been at times. Why does Gilbert Sagata ask me if I just had a baby, Daniel? Gilbert Sagata is the guy who uses the Moberg icon. I've several times enjoyed telling the story about how Moberg's sister Ethelberg was a friend of my mother, and in her dotage, Ethel sold off many of her precious antiques to my mom. And I went over her house too sometimes. And some of the antiques had belonged to Moberg himself. She lived in Newark, New Jersey, in the East Orange border, and it was right by a part of Newark. Well, Newark had been destroyed in the manner that exactly how E. Michael Jones describes in The Death of the Cities. You know, I guess with the the John Deweyan coalition with the kosher folks had seen the Catholic communities in places like Newark as an impediment to their grand project, probably in cooperation with the car companies to spread individuals into the suburbs and ruin the walkable communality there and base the civic engineering on the car industry. And so they blockbusted the Catholic communities and brought up blacks from the South with the promise, for example, of welfare housing. They actually tore down old Italian sections. Used to be really nice, in fact, and put up these high-rise incubators for blacks on welfare. And of course, this followed with, the terrible decline of Newark and the riots there. But anyway, Ethelberg lived in a part of Newark, and she was the kindergarten teacher of my three older siblings. And Moberg lived there with her after his sort of retirement from espionage during World War II. He was assigned to find out, crucially, whether Werner Heisenberg had the capacity to build a nuclear bomb and to shoot him if in fact he did. He concluded that Heisenberg did not have that capacity. He was speaking with him, asking him suspicious questions after a lecture of Heisenberg, I think in Switzerland. He was also a baseball player in addition to being a genius and a spy. And he did reconnaissance when the American baseball team visited Japan just prior to the war, taking reconnaissance photos in Japan, things like this. Spoke, I think, 7 languages. And anyway, I just think it's interesting to me personally. Gilbert Sagata uses this image of a guy who has some tenuous connection to my family anyway. Claire Bauer's not going to be interested in talking to you, I guarantee you. Forget it. Give it up. Yeah, but anyway, as I said, in the death of the city of Newark, as it became, a nightmare, few Italian enclaves hanging on in the North Ward where my grandmother lived. Once beautiful, vital city was just destroyed by the importation of the homies from the South. and then the riots of 67 and 68. But also, like I said, the car industry and Eisenhower's thruway system right through the heart of the city runs, I think it's Interstate 280. And what I'm getting at, 280 ran only like, it was built, a matter of meters away from Ethelberg's house. To make matters worse, not only was she surrounded by, these aliens. I mean, to see this old lady walking around her house and the kind of people that she was surrounded by, and then that highway with cars whizzing by. This was not an elegant end of life scenario. It was very, very sad, actually. And she was good to my mother. Really, sold her beautiful antiques for a very good price. My mother bought 2 Hopsburg chairs from Ethelberg. This, from the Hopsburg, these chairs with these big carved wooden boar's heads with crowns on the back. It's like really, but I know that sounds ridiculous, but they're beautiful, and they have lion's feet for the feet of the chairs and whatnot. She's got 2 of them, or had 2 of them. They were in my sister's possession at last, but I remember eating black-eyed peas with Ethelberg. And, oh, they're marvelous. And she gave me a picture from the Canfield, the cartoonist from the New York Times, who did a cartoon in 1967 proposing that Carl Yastrzemski be nominated for president rather than George Romney or some of the other, George Romney or Nixon or some of the other candidates that were out there that year going for 1968 election. Anyway, so that's I just always like to capitalize on Gilbert Zagato's icon of the of Moberg spy. All right. So I sent the link to Mirth Baron and to Snorkelblog, and snorkel time, it is 5 o'clock, but it is a Sunday, and he's got a family and another kid on the way. I can't really blame people for being up to other things on a day like this. For Mirth Baron, it's a bit early, I would say. Well, it's not even 9 o'clock in London, so on a Sunday he might be indulging in some well-earned rest. I'm sure he works hard. Last I heard, he was driving a forklift. That started a new job. But I did get a confirmation from Per Nordin that he would be joining me on Monday or Tuesday, so tomorrow or Tuesday. He is busy this weekend with his brother is being married, and I would guess he's marrying a woman of European extraction, if not Swedish extraction. But these days, you never know. Look at what Adele did. That is disgraceful. Yuck, Adele. I don't like you anymore. Oh. Seamus Crawford says the diabolical God of Muhammad is not the most powerful and conceivable being. Can he become incarnate in the? Indeed, this is one of Claire's fallacies in saying that the Abrahamic God is God at all, let alone some sort of fanciful thing that the kosher folks hold up to pretend that they're chosen by this fictional sky spook of theirs. It's nonsense, and it's not the most powerful. It's not real. It isn't history. It's just more astounding rubbish. Even so, Claire Call managed to take the one step further with greater rubbish than ever. Oh, and I did need to correct Snorkel about one other thing. He said in the last chat, and I don't know why he would say this, that Claire has respected you. Well, I don't respect Claire's opinion. Well, she has some thoughts on certain concrete particulars, but for crying out loud. Seamus Crawford says, Daniel, I'm Catholic. Well, I don't have the context to comment on that fact, except I'm not a Catholic. I'm not any kind of Christian. I don't agree with those who say that the Catholics are worse than other kinds of Christians, like say Orthodox Christian is better than they are. They're all nonsense, pernicious nonsense as far as I'm concerned. However, I do have to find a way to be somewhat diplomatic about this, because I'm not going to change these people. I don't want to fight with these people. If they have European genetics, I don't want to. Obviously, I'm not going to exclude them. But the thing is that I think that the red ice people have a pretty good take on the Christians, for example. If they're basically finding a way to interpret scriptures and practices that does defend our people, then okay. But it's folk first, not faith first. Folk first, and certainly, if we're talking about sortocracy, one of the things that it is, I need to ensure that there are places to go, like this platform, for example, that say no, Christianity is not approved of here. We don't do Christianity here. We see Christianity as egregious misdirection. It's in the text. It's misdirection. It's destructive to our people. We don't accept it. It's a bad map. I don't go to places where Christians are and try to and persecute them. I don't even criticize them in their places. I don't do that. So I'm willing to leave them alone. But the problem has been in the past that where I tried to provide a platform and relief for people who don't want Christianity, which is most people, most Europeans who don't believe it, a place for them to go, that the Christians wouldn't leave me alone. People like Thorne and Matt Parrott, they wouldn't stop hassling me. And the same thing was with what's his name, Godward. So, yeah, I mean, people who don't believe in that stuff or the Abrahamic religions, let alone Claire's secular Coranism, which is just the most colossal pile of shit, total nonsense. They ought to have a place to go in, free from being trolled by those Abrahamics, and importantly, concentrate on bringing, arriving more and more at a consensus of a moral order that is consistent with our biological interests, with the maintenance of our genus and species. And that's not impossible. It's not a pipe dream. That is the way this kind of negotiation is the way all religions start in the beginning. They don't come from God as they claim, God beyond nature as they try to claim. That's a self-serving fiction, a lie. Okay, so I don't even know if I should bother putting in the link because it doesn't look like anybody's here who I really want to talk to. I don't want to talk to Claire right now. There's no reason. Seamus Crawford says he's a Catholic. He doesn't want to talk to me. Gilbert Salgado. Well, he's a fairly interesting guy. He's a New Yorker, so there in the thick of things, and pretty intelligent, as I understand. Although last time I talked to him, he did say something which was kind of antagonistic, like something to the effect of you'll never defeat us, or something like look, I'm not trying to defeat you. I'm trying to pursue an autonomous path, unfettered and unpersecuted by others. So, you really have no legitimate beef with me, and no reason to compete. There's one thing that, when I was talking about, one thing I should correct that Claire suggested when we're talking about requirements for democratic input, and she proposed that people should be married in order to vote. I don't know if I would agree with that. Although, again, I want to incentivize marriage and fidelity. I could see maybe having their vote count a little more, having the vote of married people, maybe not even that. No, I do. Yeah, but probably not making marriage a requirement to be able to vote. And again, the whole idea of voting is a concept that needs to be greatly refined and taken out of this clunky quantifying process. But I just wanted to correct that because it sounded like I was a little bit too open to that. I would not probably not want to make that exclude unmarried people from democratic participation. Almost certainly not want to exclude them. So, let's see. Although again, I did like, I thought it was a nice touch in which I ended the last show. Contrary to academic agents' idea that monogamy and marriage are apparently wholly unnatural to the point of its being almost pernicious to expect that of people. I would say that's terrible natural fallacy on the part of academic agents' part. There are practical and ideal reasons to uphold monogamy in marriage. Like Mirth suggested too, most people are monogamous. It's not the thing to do to flout that. And quite the contrary. I suggest that when you're subject to one of these creeps who are bragging about their promiscuity, don't put yourself in the position of the Puritan schoolmarm, finger-wagging schoolmarm, but just you might put a furtive suggestion out there that, like, hey, some people would say that you are taking another man's wife. that you are taking another man's treasure. And I don't know that I don't think that that's necessarily such a thing to brag about. And furthermore, I mean, this whole manosphere business of, you know, trying to overcome the friend zone and, you know, find a way to score women sort of outside of your comfort zone, outside of your character. I mean, this is training people to become like R selectors. That's not good. You know, our European society at its best is K selectors. You know, we take care of our children. You know, it's a quality upbringing, not screwing women and leaving single mothers with these feral kids who turned into wild monsters because they don't have anything but the unconditional love of their mother. They don't have the restraining hand of their father to inhibit their sociopathology. No, that's why, you know, I called the stream with Snorkelblog the friend zone. Well, it's even more appropriate when it comes to streams with women, whereas the manosphere is deemed the friend zone as pejorative. I just got friended as a pejorative term. You know, when you hear that from a woman, it can be insulting. You know, I just want to be friends. Yeah, that's gross, but nevertheless, you can turn it around. You should turn it around. That's a good thing. You want to be friends? That's a good thing. Because it only takes one in terms of, you know, what you. Or it should only take one in terms of what you need from a woman in a relationship. And friends. To be friends with women should be. That should be your aim, for the most part. And conversing with them, to be friends with them, and then if something more comes from that, that's fine. And, you know, these concepts, friends, love, you know, I think really they are a bit. I'm sure that they're problematic of themselves. That they propose ideal expectations which are unhelpful, to say the least. Particularly love, the concept of love. They take you away from the fact that you are involved with someone on some level for practical reasons, and that's not bad. You're exchanging things, and that's not bad. And then you can get into rational things and being rational about it and fair about it. Are you willing to take someone who is your equal, or are you some little slut who's hypergamous and wants a guy who's really, you know, in effect, or rather, are you excluding guys who are really your equal and maybe even a little better, so that you can have someone that you think is better still? That's, you know, more the case. You know, these are things that once we get the borders secured and we get beyond Claire Claw's, you know, deceptive, her great deception that she tries to make gender relations the central issue. It's not. Gender issues can be sorted out once we get the borders of our people secured by the idea of citizenship in the Union. Uh, then we can have yes, we would see to it that marriage and monogamy are institutions that are held as a sacrosanct choice, that must be respected, and they will have the societal support of added incentives and rewards for people who are married, who are willing to be fair, in other words, and certain certain disincentives and kind of to people who don't want to be married or can't find it in themselves to be married. I'm not. It's probably not true in all respects that marriage marriage is only eugenic in all respects, and that non-monogamy is only dysgenic. Overall, I would guess so. It's not good for societal morale and maintenance and overall homeostasis. You would certainly have to have marriage in order to maintain morale and homeostasis. So that people don't become cynical and more and more animal-like. But there probably is a certain rigor to non-monogamy too, and certain maybe even necessary abilities that are evolved through those means. But yeah, I mean, I would definitely want that controlled, and the biggest control being that if you're going to do that with our approval, it's got to be with our people, that you're not perfectly monogamous. If you want to mess and certainly and of course have children with other peoples, then you would be excluded. You would be ostracized. You would lose, as a rule, you would lose your citizenship. Okay. It doesn't seem like Mirth Baron is around, and he's the only one that I trust to talk to of anybody in the chat right now. I don't see Snorkelblog around. I hope they'll come when I talk with Per Nordin. I need Per Nordin to help, because, well, he understands me well, and he's not coming from, Per Nordin's not coming from a position where, I don't think that he was probably like me, he never thought like, oh boy, Hitler, great. He's always like, could see plainly that this is European people killing other European people on the basis of Hitler's ideology. Not good. We don't want to encourage that. And he's been really good in his encountering that as unnecessary and unhelpful, to say the least, to our coordination of European interests. And he's been connected with Dr. Christian Lindner and Dr. Lindner's son, who has been one of the best of the people on our side who are debunking the Holocaust. People like Farason and Butts and so on. And helpful because he's also German, so it's tedious with me going by my mother's maiden name, People who say, "Oh, you're just an anti." No, I'm not anti-German because I don't deny the Holocaust because I don't love Hitler. That's what these guys will try to say. It's that ridiculous. Okay. I will wait a few more minutes. Forrest is dead indeed. And he was a liar, unfortunately. I liked one of Dr. Littner's quotes. I think the quote that Alison Chabalas was one of Forrest's victims. I probably just went, Snork, do you want to join? You have the link. I'm prepared for it. There's the link. What time is it? Snorkel time, it's 5:15 in the evening. 5:15 snorkel time. I am going to need to grab another cup of coffee. I'm glad you're here. You should listen, when you get a chance, try to listen back to the earlier part of the show. If I do say so myself. I don't think that I'm as bad as some guys who were just in love with the sound of their voice. Anyway, here. Hi, Snork. Good to see you there.
Hello. Hopefully, I'm coming through loud and clear. How you doing?
Very clear. More clear than me. Your mic is better than mine, I think.
This is a Shure SM57 beta. It's amazing.
It sounds it. Well, you're a photographer, so that's not far removed from.
I'm a photographer, so therefore I have a good mic.
That's right. Well, I mean, it's same kind of thing, technical kind of instrument there. Yeah.
What did I miss? I'm just editing, not editing. I'm just collating photographs at the moment, or cutting them, I suppose.
Well, I say you missed a lot, but it wasn't altogether relevant with yourself. I talked mainly about. I went through the fights that I had with James Bowery. He was kind of was into his sort of nerd project, and I am trying to make it seem like I was insulting to him because I didn't go along with everything, and then I was mad at him because he's not helping with the DNA Nations project, which I think that he should do, but he's not going to. It was talking about that, and also talk where I began the show. This will be the end of the highlights. I'm not going to belabor. Don't worry, it's not too long. I talked about how Per should be joining us on tomorrow or the next day, and then I hope that you would be there along with Mirth. And I talked about how the red cape of the left, which is the left, is about unionization, coalition building, social organization, and advocacy. In its red cape misrepresentation by the powers that be, who don't want us to do that, obviously, and they're altercasting of us as right wing. The characterology of the left has it that they don't deal with nature, reality, truth, facts, principles. But what they're not telling you is that our unionization would be a calibration of our people, and that's not mutually exclusive. In fact, it goes hand in hand with these right-wing things of quests for truth and factual verification, that sort of thing. That would be feedback. It would function as feedback in relation to in relation to the calibration of our people, structured through unionization and structuring social accountability and correctivity through there and homeostasis. But that an important thought just came up and flew away for a second. Give me a second to try to retrieve it. The feedback, the calibration, the oh God, it was important too. Which means it'll come back to me eventually, but
Right.
Oh yeah. Wait, I think I have it. Just a second.
Okay.
That. Oh yeah. It's very important that this semiotic of the left that they're trying to get us to fight against as an enemy term, Paul Gottfried and others, that we maintain that depth grammar and defy that red caping, because if we yield to, well, they want us to do three things. They want, of course, first of all, they want European peoples to be liberal, which basically means to open borders and boundaries. Failing that, they want you to identify as right wing or far right. They've always called us right wing and far right wherever we advocate our people, because that corresponds with a rigid pursuit of pure warrant, either beyond nature or within nature, which is easy to manipulate for its rigidity and short on social accountability for its narrowness, and also easily infiltrated. Failing that, they want you to identify as third position, thinking that's very clever, because third positionism introduces it introduces right wing elements that they can use as a backdoor to infiltrate and manipulate these rigidities, like the Azov battalion or something. Is a favorite latest example. Or in the case of Christianity, they could just convert people to Christians, and then hey, they're one of us. So third positionism, and failing that, they want you to do the neither left right. They want people to seem clever by saying, "Oh yeah, we're beyond left and right. That's a phony distinction." Because the depth grammar of the left is social organization and advocacy, which they don't want us to do. And if we did that, if we unionized, we would exclude these means of subversion. That's why I'm satisfied that left ethnonationalism is the way to term it and the concept to go by, because it would exclude these means for infiltration, subversion, and manipulation. So that's why I see it as so important, and why they don't want us to do it. I mean, if you listen to Keith Preston and Praise of Folly crew over there, they're always doing the bidding of this point of view of anything but what I'm saying, left nationalism, which, by the way, I got from is a concept that I became confirmed in, I should say, from Kumiko, Japanese lady.
Right.
And finally, you hear what Colin Liddell is doing with his new site. He went from alternative right to affirmative right, and now he's going autocracy or something. I forget what it's called. Anyway, he's got all the kosher folks there. He's got Luke Ford. He's got Brett Ford. Brett Stevens doing his glowy thing. He's got Nathan Coffness. So that just goes to show, that this is, where they're going desperately, the neither left nor right thing. So anyway, so that's the kind of thing that I was talking about. And sorry for being long-winded. Welcome. And when is your next child due, if I may ask?
He will be, knock on wood. I don't want to say God willing either, but I don't want to say God's willing either.
Whatever. I know
But
what you mean.
if all goes well, he will be born at the end of August. Although we
Excellent.
are trying to hurry it on just a little bit because it's a little bit, the last month there, it's safe to have the child be born, basically anytime. So we're trying our
Is that
best
right?
with prenatal yoga, doing walks at night, as well as romantic interludes to speed the child along. So
Great.
yeah.
Well, I didn't know that the last month was not that relevant.
Well, it's as long as things up to that point have been done well and the child is in good health and the mom hasn't done retarded things, then yeah, the last month the baby, it'll be fine. It should be fine. So we're hoping
That's exciting. So you're gonna have a little boy to go along with a little girl, right?
Yes, sir.
Perfect.
Very excited about that. Very excited about that.
That's terrific. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's great. Oh, I want to mention why I have you here, and I have to, of course, I have to be gingerly about this, discussing this at all.
Yeah.
Because I'm one of these people who I've known people who've had the jab without problem, right?
Right.
My doctor for one,
Right.
A dear friend of mine for another, and I'm a little bit skeptical of the kind of right-wing conspiracy theorists and people who are like just overly quick to jump on that bandwagon from my perspective. But I must say that there are examples which make me a bit even more hesitant because I haven't got it yet either, and I'm only thinking about having to have it if I need to travel. And but I saw, I don't know if you're familiar with this channel, Mark Lyda, Soft White Underbelly. He interviews all these.
I've heard of it. I've not actually paid attention to his channel though. So yeah.
Well, he interviews people who are on the underside of life, people who fall into prostitution, drug addicts, mostly people like this, not totally, or gamblers or organized criminals, things like this,
right.
And or just criminals. One of his latest interviews was this woman from a middle class. Well, she had a good family by her own admission, good parents, professionals, and she wanted to hold herself up as an example of someone who came from a good background, had a college degree, and could have done other things, but elected to become a prostitute and likes this way of life. And of course, it's unusual in itself, and she's not a bad-looking lady. Guess it's sufficient IQ, not so that really she doesn't have to do this. She's like 32 years old, but what I'm getting to is that she had the jab, and not long after, had a blood clot go through an unknown hole in her heart.
Yeah.
That therefore, and then cause her to have a stroke, which incapacitated her for a time and messed up her memory and certain brain functions. And she's not. She said that she's not all up in arms political about it. She's just describing these things matter of factly, and she said that she did say that she was depressed for a while, and that she couldn't, but that she's strong. She got back to her her prostitution profession because she's got to take care of her kid with cerebral palsy. It's like, and she's a single mother. I don't know how these people.
That's a sad.
I probably would have committed suicide if I was her. I don't know how. It's like what? Ugh.
Yeah.
and no, but she's like, I just want to show the world that you can persevere. That's sort of her attitude. But it just, I don't want to talk about it anymore because of really that topic. But it did, I have to admit that I was looking upon your reluctance as maybe a bit too careful, because I don't think most people have a problem. But now even me, I'm saying, well, do I need to travel that bad?
Yeah, well, I mean, I take it. There's a whole bunch of perspectives from which I take it, and I'll be honest. The old holdouts I had from the sort of Christian perspective, or the Zionistic Christian. I don't know. Listen, is it Zionistic? Whatever. Where the books of Revelation and Daniel and all this, and talking about the end times, where, for instance, something will happen where you have to have something in your right hand or your forehead. Obviously, that's not.
Yeah.
Right, in order to buy and sell, but then
Mark of the beast.
Couple that with all the other things. So that did early on. That was kind of that was like an angle that was coming at me. But at the same time, as I started to re-evaluate my religious perspective, and I looked at it just from a spiritual, non-religious perspective, and that is, if, for instance, and this seems true to me, and I don't think that there's no data that can disprove this, because from my own experience, looking through my own eyes and knowing all these people that I know, I've not
be careful how you talk, please.
Oh, sorry, what's that?
Be careful how you talk because of Susan and all that.
Okay, well, no one I know has been injured from the disease. Right. From the thing, from this horrible thing. My dad evidently knows someone that did die from, with, or of, right? Yeah. I have no idea which one it is. But no one I know, including, and my wife and my wife who's pregnant we all got sick about 4 months ago, I guess. Really? Maybe 3 months ago, yeah.
No one I know has died from it either.
Yep. And yet we're told that this is this great thing that's, it's a huge, as we know, right? Yeah. And beyond that, in order to do anything normal, you must put something else into your body.
Yeah.
In order to just do things normal. So from a spiritual perspective, it's essentially lies on one side telling you to do this in order to...
Okay, be careful.
Yeah, okay, sorry. Yeah, okay. Right. From a spiritual perspective, it's just, there's a lot of things that we're asked to do that sort of just derails.
Okay. I understand you. Let's not take it further. That's just one man's perspective.
It's also consent.
I think that everybody should follow the government orders and get vaccinated. Okay. So, yes, let's move on to another topic.
Okay. Yeah. That was spicy.
Yeah. Spice Girls.
Well, I just published finally published my first video on YouTube, and
really,
well, on my new channel, on this channel, on Guy Prawley. I don't even know if that's where I'm commenting from, and I'm gonna stay just away from anything at all, because that's the point of the channel isn't anything political or anything like that. But I forgot exactly what it's like.
Activism can be, even indirect means can be quite effective. I had a Belarusian colleague who was trying to fight the Russian oppression of Belarusian people and culture. Right. They, for example, have taken away Belarusian as the official language of Belarus, and Russian's the official language there, which basically try to slowly stamp out the Belarusian distinction and identity. And so what he does is, rather than try to take on Lukashenko directly and get into political conflict, he does things like publish Winnie the Pooh in Belarusian language, in a really much better version. In other words, he's taking a cultural angle to not subversion of the Russian oppression, but just for one example. And what I do with Twitter is I don't, basically I just show beautiful European things and people, and I don't go much into.
Yeah, that's good.
Positive. I don't try to subvert things. Occasionally, the only, I'll add some Japanese things once in a while, or Korean, because I want to try to ally with them. I think you've got a good position over there, and in a history of rightful opposition to Russian imperialism. Those northern islands should be Japanese, as far as I'm concerned. Sakhalin and also the Asian peoples should have more rightful claim as natives to the eastern parts of Asia. Certainly, east of Lake Baikal should be predominated, controlled territory, and the Japanese and Koreans could buy them. And yeah, okay, there could be like Russian enclaves, and they could negotiate between enclaves, Russian in the east and the Japanese and Korean controlled territories, and then some Asian territories in the Russian controlled territories west of Lake Baikal. But yeah, I mean, that's only another part of the reason why I'm enthusiastic about your cooperation and your abilities. There's a lot of really significant things that are possible with and through your abilities.
Well, I hope I don't disappoint in any way. I actually quite recently chatted. It's funny. I can't remember if last time we chatted I talked about this. I don't want to say they're not really a third party. I would call them probably quite quaint, sort of libertarian in the Japanese sense. But there's a new party that are a little bit more traditional, where they're excited about what they want is Japanese children to be born, and they want the freedom for the Japanese tradition to be spread through that child base, and they're called the Sanseito. And there's no political party that's perfect, but I talked a little bit with my wife, and there was just recently an election, and so she voted, and it's and I think she voted for them, as far as I understand, and they're not.
Right, I agree with her.
And they talk about it in a little bit the way that you talk about it. We're not left, we're not right, is how they say it. A lot of them have come from the political party that is essentially like the conservatives, but
that isn't the way I talk about it. I would talk about left, but anyway. Yeah.
Okay. Right.
Yeah. Never mind. Go on.
Yeah.
Go on.
I'm kind of your message. I'm kind of garbling your message. Sorry about that. But yeah. Anyway, they're quite interesting. And there's a lot of, I don't know if there's going to be political change in Japan, to be quite honest. I have no idea. But they also talk about unionization of the Japanese people.
Great.
Against global powers and other things.
Excellent.
And for that, it's I'm quite.
Well, that's because they're brilliant people. They know what to do.
They're also conquered people, and I think so. It's a little bit more difficult. Yes, they are brilliant people.
Well, that's as a conquered people. That's what you do. Is that you unionize when you have up against an elitist hegemony. That's how you.
Yeah, no, of course.
You unionize. That's the classic strategy.
No, absolutely. Getting to that point, of course, I don't think, because they don't have a lot of problems at the moment with immigration, the same way the West does, they don't know exactly what the powers are that they need to either unite against, and they don't know what things they have to unite for necessarily, because they don't have they don't have a foreign element that they're really fighting against at the moment, and so it's a little bit more
But
difficult.
it's there. That stuff that liberalism is coming from, you know who, and they definitely view the Japanese as opponents, and the ultimate rule that they seek.
Yep.
So they're, even if it's indirectly through means of the Abrahamic religions, which is what, and there are Japanese who understand that.
Yep. No, there are actually. I spent wee hours. I was wee hours up in the late. I was up till the wee hours, late at night, chatting with like I said, I think I mentioned this, not a colleague, a customer of mine actually, and he and I were we were just chatting about just every sort of thing that. I'm glad we're in Japan, which is crazy to say. Yeah.
I know, our vaunted free speech, right?
Yeah, incredible. It's incredible. Yeah. But yeah, it was nice to chat with someone that had that sort of vision, because I don't chat with people that understand the sort and no one understands everything. Like there's no way anyone, doesn't matter how enlightened or not enlightened they are, or whatever you want to call it. There's no way that any of us are going to understand. Anyone here is going to understand everything that's really up against.
Even everything that you
exactly.
need to understand.
Yeah, but it was very nice to chat with someone who understood that things aren't right. They aren't wrong just because a such and such political party are in power,
right?
And they changed that, and that's going to be it. No, that it was something. Yeah, it was. Anyway, it was good. That's it. It was good.
Yeah. I was blown away by Kumiko's intelligence. I had the good experience of talking to her daily for a couple of years, and she never ceased to amaze me with her intelligence. I haven't spoken to her for quite a while now, and I guess I won't be, because she's in probably a delicate situation there in England. Probably can't talk with me. But
well, that's a shame.
It is. It's a shame.
That's good that you've met. That was I think I mentioned maybe the first or second time we chatted that I hadn't yet had the good opportunity of meeting a Japanese who was sort of awake to a lot of the issues, and finally it happened, just last week. So it's I guess all things come in their time. So yeah.
Well, Kumiko wasn't 1,000%. I helped her too. She wasn't 1,000% awake to the sources of these problems exactly, and I helped to say, well, this is not exactly necessarily a white per se foible that's going on here. There's a particular kind. And she came to understand that, and other things, and that but anyway, I don't want to get into that. It's complicated, and I hope that she comes back into our conversations. But I think that the right wingers have just chased her away to where she's ducking for cover with liberals, and it's kind of a shame.
How late is it, by the way, where you are?
It's early. It's 10:43 in the morning.
I said late. Yeah, early. Yeah. Wow, you're a trooper.
A trooper? No, but I slept last night.
Huh?
Although, I wasn't up.
You're Generation X, right?
Yeah.
I'm tail end of Generation X, so
I'm at the very beginning. Matter of fact, technically, I would be a boomer. But
okay, well, I'm technically Generation X, but only by like 2 years, and it depends on who you talk to, because I've seen Generation X end at 1979, and I'm 1979, and I've seen it begin at 1981, in which case I have 2 years there. But
no, Generation X.
I mean,
That's when
ended.
that's when the book came. Oh, ended. Yeah, the book came out.
Not begin. Sorry about
The
that.
book came out about 1980, and the first I heard of it, I was like, "That's me," because my older siblings were all 2 years apart, and the last one, the third one, 4 years older than me. But they were definitely boomers. And even though Generation X is supposed to begin around 1965, like 20 years, or is a generation, right?
Right.
And I'm born in 1961, so I technically a boomer, but definitely not really, because of the logical force of my relation to my older siblings, and the way I got skunked by that generation. I fell into all the kind of the situation and syndromes of of identifying with Generation X, absolutely. But I've come with a fairly unique and, I believe, accurate understanding of what generation is supposed to be. I mean, you hear people criticize, oh, generations, they're all like ironic and cynical and disillusioned, this and that. But what Generation X is supposed to do is provide social correctives to the selfishness and modernist kind of late modernist destruction of the boomers. And that's what I've been working on. I think that I'm doing a good job of it, if I do say so myself. But it's running into all kinds of resistance for various reasons. The boomers' commitments, like I was talking about with you last time. There's a pipeline of right-wing boomers that goes directly into the internet bubbles of the millennials and Gen Z, who are insulated from the reality testing of their ideas, and so are just sort of badly protecting these right-wing mistakes of the boomers that they're being funneled.
Right.
And this is what I'm having to fight against. But by the same token, maybe I should be grateful. It gives me, a special project to that that I can feel good about, because, well, it's making sense consistently of what's going on, and this kind of sort of radar tracking system I've got going on here. So it's not all bad, but it's a shame that so far it's only good for my personal self-esteem, because that's not what it's about. It's a platform which can set the ship aright for all of us, so to speak.
What do you think about? I think that Claire Koa is in the chat. What do you think about? Because I don't think we've ever directly sort of addressed. I have a lot of problems with secular Coranism. As
I don't have any problem with it. I just dismiss it as utter rubbish from the start. Very simple.
Well, I don't know if I should have done that at first. I kind of like to listen, like, to people's ideas,
and she has a beautiful voice, and she has some
incredible
faults.
Yeah, incredible. I don't wish I had her voice, because if I did, I kind of like. Well, I mean, if I was a woman,
then all these guys would be wanting to fuck you.
Well, maybe
that would be good.
That fixed the entire situation right there. But yeah. So, but what would your problems be with secular Coranism? I mean,
what are not my problems? Well, first of all,
yeah.
Even before the contradiction of
right,
secular and Islam, that's a contradiction of terms. But even before that, just what a generally alien thing and thing of aversion that Islam is to European peoples.
Absolutely.
Especially with all the terror that's gone on and the alien values of the people of that religion to our European ways.
Right.
But most radically, I am against all Abrahamic religions as an affectation, and worse than an affectation, an imposition, an alien imposition, imperialist imposition on European peoples. Now, it was a bit sneaky in the way Christianity did it, but it's nevertheless an Abrahamic religion. I've heard it said, perhaps quite accurately, that Christianity has functioned as the shield of Judaism and Islam the sword of Judaism. For its,
or the broom. I've heard the broom as well for Islam. It's no, I think both are accurate. In some ways, obviously Christianity served as in its own way against the European people. It served as a sword, right, in its own way. And Islam, of course, came into Europe as well, and getting into that ends up, possibly getting on the ADL watch list or whatever. But Christianity having, you don't even have to look through history. You just talk with your Christian friends today, and if you bring up the word, say, heathen or something, immediately it's equated with Satanism. For I would say maybe a vast majority of Christians, it's just immediately whatever your ancestors were involved in was satanic. And I think that there's a little bit of a loosening up, because of, if you have Christianity or you have Europeans sort of kowtowing to this new thing, it's like, what do you mean new? It's 2,000 years old. Well, it's 2,000 years old, but there were Europeans here before that. There are Europeans who had culture before that, who had morals, who had values, who had
yes.
philosophical.
Well, let me just interject one more thing in the problems with it. These are universal religions. They're not helping us to maintain our kind. Matter of fact,
Right.
there are scriptures which work against that.
That's correct.
And so these are imperialist religions which are against our maintenance of our kinds. And yes, people can interpret things differently and blah blah blah, but really, you come back to the text eventually, and there's too much of that for that to be
right
helpful. And okay, so sorry, carry on.
No, it's all right. I think we're obviously going to end up going in the same direction here, but I'm coming from a very recent Christian perspective, and I can't say that, like, Nathan, are you saying that you're non-Christian? Well, Claire in our DMs was like, well, that's because you're a cultural Christian. And you know what? It is obviously an epithet calling someone a cultural Christian, because it's like, you're neither here nor there. It's just that your culture has adopted that thing, and therefore by default. But that's just how things are. Whether you're in a religious setting or a non-religious setting, you are by default whatever the culture just says you are, or whatever.
Well, there's another thing to that which is not. If you take away the word culture, calling someone a Gentile or a Christian was in many respects just a way of saying not Jewish.
Right.
So it was, benign in that respect. And also, but I wanted to say something about the Japanese and Satanism, because
I'm excited.
Lucifer,
yeah.
to my understanding, Kumiko has led me to understand, I believe, that it's, this is one of the, the kind of the Shinto deities. This was Venus, the bringer of light to Earth. It's a good thing. It's a good thing. It's not evil, right?
Right.
Same as with the Yazidi, and this is that Lucifer is not an evil thing at all. And so when you see the girl bands and everything making their little devil finger sign, this is really a defiance of Abrahamism, is what they're doing. Is my understanding that there's a whole clandestine understanding that this is part of their means of defying this Abrahamic imperialism. It's really cool stuff that the Japanese and the Koreans have got going in that regard.
Maybe. I don't know so much about girl bands. I do know that there's a lot.
Well, I don't know that they're all kind of like that in depth, but there is some of that going on.
Yeah, I mean, there probably is. I mean, like, I haven't really looked into the, like, for instance, the Kyoto school or anything like that. They're supposed to have their own sort of philosophy that was somewhat based on, from what I understand, there's actually a connection to both Nietzsche and Heidegger, which you might enjoy. But they do have a different philosophical perception of the world from the even post Meiji. And Meiji, of course, came in and basically redefined Japan as a country that, and a people that would then have to learn from abroad, come back, and then sort of implement all those things. So basically become itself within a single nation that was not multicultural, become, in a way, a multicultural nation by implementing foreign ideas into the nation of Japan. But it's interesting when you step out slightly outside of the city, and sometimes even in the city, how they, for instance, if you put up a house right now, they will, at the end of the house, before they put up all the walls and everything, they've just put up the structure, the timber frame, or whether it's a 2x4 frame, whatever it is, they will have a Shinto priest come on, and religious or not, they're going to bless the house in a Shinto way, and everyone.
That's great.
You were invited to your house to have a drinking party with the people that made the house, the construction. Like
wow.
The guys that,
what a cool thing,
put it together, and then watch the priest do his thing, and then you'll be there with the contractor as well. And we didn't do that. I wasn't, like I said, I was woken up to a bunch of things by the time this house was made, but I was in the middle of like an atheist phase, and I wish I wasn't, because I think I missed something pretty that probably could have spoken to me and given me a perspective on this country and these people a lot earlier than, and at the moment I'm learning.
Couldn't you still do that ceremony?
No, it's too late for this house. However, if I end up helping constructing some other houses in the future, or some other buildings, I will partake in such a ritual, I guess. So
it's an amazing culture. One of my early big shot in the arms comes from a Japanese Buddhist named Dogen. I'll read it to you. It's very short.
Sure.
I'm just clicking through my posts. I'll get to it soon. It's a very, very short saying, and it helped me a lot. Oh, come on. And the Buddhists, I think, the Japanese Buddhists are like sort of fellow travelers with the Shinto. Mm. They're not quite the same thing, but they don't exactly fight either, is my understanding.
Yeah, I was in a city the other day called Izu, and they have right next to a big Buddhist temple, they've got a small Japanese shrine, or a Shinto shrine, and it's quite interesting. Wait, I'm getting... Is the stream a little bit of slowness?
It might be because I'm having trouble.
Okay.
Loading.
Well, it's quite interesting. The difference between the Buddhist temple is quite large. I'm guessing it would take about a minute to walk across. Like how long was that, Nathan? Is that 100 meters? I don't think it's 100 meters, but it might be pretty close. And it's several large buildings, and it had like the fountains and everything. It had the very, to my eyes, foreign eyes, it looks very kind of Chinese in its own way, but it's a beautiful Chinese stuff. And then about 30 meters just down across a couple of shops, there's a Shinto shrine. And the Shinto shrine, what's at the center of the shrine is, of course, there's a small little building, but the building itself is surrounded by the oldest structures to exist in that area, which were massive old trees, which I think the largest of which is probably about 2.5 meters across, so diameter. and there was a tree that was called the marriage tree, where there's two large trees had grown together, and so they were about well, they're both massive, about 2 meters across. But right at the center, there's a saddle where they had grown together, and so it was considered the marriage tree. And the Shinto is all to nature, and Buddhism is to something else. And I don't understand Buddhism, so interesting though.
Definitely. This window is taking too long to load, so I'm just gonna close it and find the quote in another window.
Yeah,
It's to the effect of I'll paraphrase, and then if I can find the exact quote in a minute, I'll read it. But it's Dogen says, to know Buddha is to know yourself. And to know yourself is to become one with the universe. To become one with the universe, you must forget that you are one with the universe, or drop the notion that you are one with the universe, along with the stars and the galaxies. Something like that. So in other words, it's like to forget the whole idea that to forget your links, for example, with other people that would cause you to act in a stupid way, or be concerned with your own path, and
right.
in that way you're actually more harmonious with the universe than if you're too preoccupied with how it is that you should be concerned and serving other people or whatever.
Right.
Or for some of us, it's important anyway. We're brought up with this kind of obsequiousness of Christianity. Let me see if I can. No, I finally can close that window. So I'll get it at majority rights. I have it there too. Is the stream working? I haven't checked.
That's a good question. There's chat.
Oh, yeah, it is. It's working. Okay. I'm glad you're here.
Well, I'm glad that I made the stream, actually. Like I said, I was actually kind of worried about it over the weekend, because I know that you had said that you wanted to do a stream, and I didn't even respond to your email this time. Sorry about that. I was busy finishing Battlestar Galactica, which is stupid, but I've been working with a friend to finish it for 3 years. So I went to his house with my daughter. She stayed over with a friend, and then with her friend. I stayed with my friend, finishing until 3 a.m. And then yesterday it was.
Well, you'll never hear me criticizing people who have children and family from doing things like that, and say, "Oh, you should be here with me complaining about the kosher." No.
Well, it's. I used to like spending the night like that, as we all do when we're younger, man. But oh man, I was so tired. And the next day I got home and I was like, you know what I'm just gonna sharpen my axe. I'm gonna sharpen I've got a broad axe. I've got a Japanese like single toothed it's called kataba, which is like the blade is only on one side instead of two. So it's like a broad axe, but it's a knife. So you can chop trees flat on one side just with a knife, but you chop it instead of slice. I was going to sharpen that. And then I also have a couple of planes that I have to flatten and clean up and hone. And so I was going to do that. And the way I do it, it's called the scary sharp method that a lot of carpenters know about. And you just basically you got a piece of glass that's perfectly flat. You take some sprayed adhesive. You put sandpaper on top of that, and then you put some WD-40 on that, and you just very quickly finish sharpening. Well, I did that, but right when I was applying the spray adhesive to the 15, so I've got two pieces of sandpaper, one at 240 or 400, and then one at 1500 grit. And when I was doing the 1500 grit, and I was applying it, making it flat, making sure there's no bubbles underneath, dear me, the bottle I was using, which is an aerosol spray, suddenly exploded.
Oh
And
no.
yeah, it fired up into the air. I don't know how far it went above my house. And by the time I understood what was happening, it landed on the ground, but it hit me. So I have a cut. I have a cut in my forehead, and I actually got a small concussion because it hit my forehead.
It came down right on your head?
No, on the way up. So like
Oh, on the
it's
way
right
up.
down,
Wow.
right down in front of me.
When it
About
was most forceful. Wow.
yeah.
Jeez.
And so I got a bump in the side of my head. I was dizzy yesterday. I got a cut in my forehead, and so yesterday I was kind of like out, but
Hopefully you
I'm
don't
a
didn't
lot
get a
better
bad
now.
concussion from that.
Well,
Come
I'm
back to
back.
haunt you.
I feel like I'm back. My wife, who's she works in pharmaceuticals, and she, slices and dices rats for a living. She's taken a keen interest in how I'm doing, so I think I'm all right. So yeah, but so I wasn't ready for anything yesterday, so I'm glad that I found
It's
you
okay.
today.
No, I didn't stream yesterday. I just, I on the other hand was concerned that I was not keeping my word because I said I was going to do a stream yesterday and today. But I found the exact Dogen quote, if I can read it to you. It
Yeah.
goes like this: To learn Buddhism is to know yourself. To know yourself is to forget yourself. To forget yourself is to identify yourself with the law of the universe, one with the universe. To be one with the universe is to drop the notion that you are one with the universe, along with the body and mind of yourself and others. Dogen. I think he pronounced it Dogen. But he's Japanese Buddhist from, I don't know what, 1500s, 1600s, 1200, long time ago.
Yeah.
But that was that really resonated with me at the time that I read it. It's like, it's something that's so. There's something so not in the way of Christian misdirection there. It's
Right.
something healthy about it, beautiful. Anyway, yeah. So I don't know. I'm just ever since talking to, I never really had a big thing about Japanese or Asians like some guys, but after talking to, like, one thing I always notice is, like, I was always impressed, but you look at them and then suddenly you hear them talk, and this, like, you can hear the intelligence in their manner of speaking, their ability with English. It's like, whoa, that I did notice, but I was not, talking with Kumiko, I was completely blown away by her intelligence, and and so I definitely have a little crush on the Japanese because of that. It's not, but it's not the usual thing is, oh well, you like Oriental women because they're female and submissive. For me, it wasn't that. It's their intelligence that really captivates me.
Interesting.
Yeah, they're pretty enough. It's not. That's not. I'm not saying that's not that too. But it's like, yeah. So I understand. The guys who were get a bit of yellow fever and are traitors.
Yeah.
I can understand, and I don't think that it's. I think that it's forgivable. Is what I mean to say, even if it is not something that you would want to happen too much.
Oh, no. Well, I was talking with my wife about that today. She's a pretty we have a pretty honest relationship about that sort of thing. And we're talking about just sort of the boy bands thing that's popular in Asia. And the boy bands, it gets these boys to, well, you know what they're like. They're like shaved, like some of them even shave their eyebrow. They shave everything. They're like more girly than girls. They do, plastic surgery. They never have a masculine body or a masculine voice, and it's all about dancing and looking good. And when girls decide that, or not decide, but like when that's decided by the cultural general, that is what is hot, then other boys are going to emulate that. And then what happens is, as we know, you get people that come in from abroad who are not that, but are then suddenly you get an injection of, I guess, whether it's waning or not, testosterone. And the girls are suddenly realize that this thing that they've been fed as the attractive thing is wrong. And man, it's such a Japan has a lot of really cool stuff about it, but that stuff is just disgusting. Just it just destroys men and women and their relationships. So
Wow. Yeah, I'm not. I wouldn't try to defy you that there isn't problems there too. Yeah.
oh yeah, well, just everywhere. Yeah, of course we do. It was, may I ask a question of someone in the chat?
Yeah.
I,
Go
I
ahead.
don't know. It's your show.
May I step away for a second and put on
Yeah.
some coffee? Carry on
Okay.
as well.
Okay.
Just don't talk about, you know.
Right. Right. Nothing off. Okay. Well, I guess Furza Italia, you said what do you have?
He's a troll, I think.
Oh, he's a troll. Oh, okay, so I shouldn't ask the troll. Okay, never mind. Well, I got no questions for the chat then. I just want. Hey, Seamus. I like your name. If you're an Irish Christian, I have every respect for you. I am myself, I guess, a cultural Christian at the moment, but at the same time, I think it's unfair to say that, because saying cultural Christian really is. I think it sort of it misses a lot of things. It misses a lot of things. I when I hear certain things that trigger in a positive or a negative way the Christians, they trigger me in the same way, and it could be something that's deeply inbred into my blood. It could be something that's just from the culture. It could be from the fact that I'm a pastor's son, etc., and all of that. But in other words, I'm coming from a Christian perspective, and so a lot of the way that I still look at the world is that way. And I don't think that anyone can really fluff off their religion, even if they sort of release from it or whatever. I'm not sure if there is such a way to do that. And I understand that accepting Christ as your personal savior is a lot different than being a quote unquote cultural Christian. So maybe even using the term Christian is imperfect. But I'm just trying to explain things. But yeah, it's been kind of a recent transformation in a way. I've been a Christian for a very long time, and I did go through, as a lot of people do, sort of a Christian, or sorry, an atheist phase. But I'm no longer an atheist, and I just, yeah, every Christian that I meet, unless they're the CI type, the Christian identity type, will prefer the non-Christian, non-European over the non-Christian European, and this is something that just I understand. If this is all individual, if Christianity is just an individualistic religion, and that all that matters is your saved soul at the end of things, I understand that perspective. But it just, I mean, it's basically damning your own race, and it's not good. I mean, that's my position. Yeah.
Is your wife a Christian?
No.
Really?
We went to Bible school together, though. Just to say that. So.
Well, I'm rooting for her to convert you.
What do you want? Well, she doesn't have a religion, so it could be that I'm actually kind of more of an influence.
Doesn't she go to the Shinto shrine?
Nope. Now, so the Japanese on I think it's well, New Year's and New Year's they'll go to either Shinto or Buddhist, temple or shrine, but it's not a You know what? Listen, I don't know what religion is. I got to be honest here. Like, so if you're grown up as maybe a Muslim or a Christian, you're gonna have all these like intense ceremonies that you have to be involved in every week, and of course, it's probably more intense on the Muslim side than the Christian side. But for you, religion is this really super active thing, and you have to believe in this thing that you cannot see, and none of it's attached to the natural world, and therefore, or God is outside of the natural world, etc. Although He's created the natural world, whatever. But because of that, when as a former Christian or a Christian or whatever, when you think about religion, you think of it differently. So when I look at the Japanese people, the Japanese nation, the Japanese culture, and they are more, I don't know if they're agnostic, whatever you want to say, from an outside perspective, you look at them, and I've seen this in article after article, that the Japanese are very atheistic. The thing is, even the people that profess no religion here go to shrine, spend money at shrine, because it's a cultural thing. But what if that is, in its own way, not true religion, but it's like it's where you're not interacting or under the purview of priests all over, where
Well, I think it's religion.
yeah, but it's a different type. It's not like it's not a top-down religion in the same way. So, and
Yeah.
I'm not about
No,
to
I'm not
debate.
trying to. I'm not.
Yeah.
I feel as if I'm causing consternation in you. I don't
No,
want to
not
do
at
that.
all. No, you're not. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. Yeah. So I didn't ask Forza Italia anything.
I think that Forza Italia was the guy who last time said that making these really ominous statements. You're something like your program is a direct threat to ours, and we can't let you do this. Saying crap
European
like that.
man, I think he said. I don't know if he has a program himself.
But I just I can't I can't I can't live my life in fear. I don't.
Hmm.
I know that my platform is about as innocent as it gets. I mean, really. So I don't. I've taken great care to make that clear. So if he has a beef with me, he shouldn't. He's the one who's aggressive.
Yeah, it's complicated, man. I mean, I suppose especially if for your position, you espouse or kind of use the language like, for instance, left, etc. And a lot of people who are pro-European at the moment and pro-European in a nationalistic, a nation-based sense or an ethnic sense are they consider themselves on the right, and and you talk about that pretty extensively. It's kind
Well, I
of
do, and it's like I said, it's pretty much it's a 101 thing for me. It's very very fundamental, and I am only reluctant to go there in this case because I do talk about it so much that people are going. I don't want people to think that I'm, kind of myopic or something, but there's important reasons for that, as I've said, and my diagnosis consistently makes sense. So there's no reason to back down for. But yes, there's a reason why. And it has to do with marketing. Why people in the dissident right or whatever are identifying as right and seeing the left more like a characterology of the left as the enemy, because it's a Madison Avenue type affair.
what's Madison Avenue?
Madison Avenue is the street in New York City where all the advertising firms and marketing firms are,
Okay,
and they're all kosher.
Okay.
Which so that's like Ogilvy Group, Young and Rubicon, Gray Advertising, all of those
Okay.
are there. And what I've been at this and around long enough to have seen what's happened. It's always been the case. It's always been the case that anybody who defends European peoples and their nationalities and whatnot has been called by the YKW right, or more usually even far right.
Right.
That's been going on for decades. Just anybody who, and the reasons, unsurprisingly, why they want to call you right or far right are not good, but not many people. Nobody has diagnosed that, really, except for me. Now, what's new, or relatively new, since 2008, is everybody, doing all these podcasts and everything, and going into all this characterologies about how the left is our enemy, and they go to this characterology. There's this characterology of the left as these people who don't deal with reality, who want equality, who are social justice warriors, are they want diversity, they want multicultural. They don't want diversity. Excuse me. They do want diversity. They want multiculturalism. They're not dealing with nature as it is. That they don't deal with high moral principles. That they don't deal with objective facts. And this was not happening. It was not common before 2008 for people to rail against the left. And it only started happening in 2008, I'm seeing, because that's when kosher hegemony came to a head.
Right.
At the end of the boom bust cycle in the Austrian school of economics, the magic hand had, lo and behold, bailed them magically out of their subprime housing gambit, where they could buy up real estate for cheap, bail out the Goldman Sachs or whoever else was sponsoring, and ADI was selling insurance on top of the imposed loans to minorities who couldn't pay the loans back for HUD, for the Ginnie Mae and Fannie Mae housing bonds. And so they cleaned up. That's when they came to greater hegemony than ever. It wasn't just this 2008 culmination of their hegemony, but also that was around the time when people were beginning to scratch their heads and say, why are we fighting these neocon wars? And
right.
By the way, who makes up the neocons? Well, they're kind of looking, kosher. And so people are, there's a skepticism growing there as to who is behind that. Operation Clean Break, you may have heard of, which was the plan to use American military to secure the realm around Israel. It's behind the Iraq
Greater
War.
Israel, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if not Greater Israel, at least take out regimes that
a whole bunch of different countries.
Israel felt threatened. Yeah. With Syria, Iran is now under the gun, and it's evident that what's going on in Ukraine is part of that too. With Victoria Nuland, her husband Robert Kagan was one of the authors of Operation Clean Break. So people, were taking note of that, and which meant that the neocons were under suspicion. That was one controlled opposition. This farce of this pretense of this Levi Strauss pretense of conservative opposition when it wasn't at all. It was imperialist and in Zionist interests. So people like Paul Gottfried and David Horowitz and others realized that there is. It's time to roll out the other controlled opposition, which was the Paleocons, right? But before, I don't want to get ahead of myself, there was one other thing that reached a crescendo around 2008, which was the Frankfurt School stuff, the political correctness, which is a coalition of politically correct groups, blacks, women and feminists especially, and gays and other and anti-whites, including white anti-whites, were aligned against the powers that be. That was the whole idea, to overthrow white power. But the problem for Jews, the kosher folks, was that they are among the most powerful, and so people who are seeing themselves as oppressed and unionized to look critically, as quote leftists upon the powers that be, are going to start noticing a lot of kosher power and influence up there as well. So those three major things are coming together around 2008, and suddenly, lo and behold, you start hearing people talking about the left as the enemy, right, and wanting to rebrand paleoconservatism as the alternative right. And because the kosher folks want to garner alliance with right-wing reactionaries, who are people who are generally either disingenuously or on top of the situation because they have for whatever good fortune, they're on top, and they want to believe that they're there for reasons that don't require a whole lot of account and indebtedness to their folks, which are objective reasons. I just have a high IQ. It's not. I don't really.
Right.
I didn't get any help, from anybody. I don't owe my European people anything. I'm just I'm just here because of the greatness of my wonderfulness. And by the way, I get a big payoff from the kosher folks from saying that. I get a good seat in Congress and whatnot. And they generally, these right wingers generally get a financial payoff for saying that they're so objectively perfect and alt-right, and then the liberals coming from the same position, the same objectivist flattering, are told that they're able to conduct themselves like sexual pigs, for example, because they're just so strong and wonderful, and so their reward is license and licentiousness, and so these things, objectivism. So the alternative right was a rebranding of paleoconservatism, this false opposition that came from Frank Meyer, and that Frank Meyer, and I Kumiko helped me to understand some of this, by the way. Frank Meyer was a kosher guy who was originally a Trotskyist, I believe, but some kind of Marxist. But then he became an American, and like a lot of the kosher folks, didn't like where the Soviet Union was going under Stalin. So he had to, they had to get with the American program somehow. So he concocted this thing that he called fusionism, which was a fusion of Judeo-Christianity and Enlightenment values, which actually fits very well with America as it understood itself. This kind of mishmash of these ideas that don't exactly go together, but you sort of like whatever, try to fluff it along somehow. And anyway, so Paul Gottfried was one of the early people to take up this fusionism of Frank Meyer, called Paul Gottfried, of course, being kosher himself. He actually gave it the name paleoconservatism. Now, this is all important because I've got people saying that I'm putting too much blame on Paul Gottfried. He's a really good guy, and it's not. This is to misunderstand, and ascribing too much power to him. If nothing else, he describes a position, but he also was, in many respects, key. Because then, Frank Meyer was also the mentor of President Reagan. And so this paleoconservatism is growing, this other false opposition, besides the neocon, is growing through this trajectory. And also, then not only, so you have Reagan, you have Paul Gottfried, and you have Pat Buchanan, could be called a paleoconservative, and you have Sam Francis of the MPI Institute, which would become Richard Spencer's thing, but before Richard Spencer was Sam Francis, who was doing the Burnham thing of the managerial elite, which is kind of like a nice way for the kosher folks to distract from any of their part in managerial elitism. It's just this kind of like nebulous group. Someone like Mencius Mollberg would love it. Distracts from his people's part and what's going on. And Joe Sobran, really smart, another really smart guy like Sam Francis, was a paleocon, because he was Catholic. He's the one. Joe Sobran's the one who said that it used to be that an anti-Semite was someone who hated Jews. Now, an anti-Semite is someone who Jews hate. And he also said that there's no perceptible difference between in their mating and migratory patterns. There's no perceptible difference between a Klansman and a liberal. But anyway, so he was a smart guy. He was these are the precursors. And then when Sam Francis died, there was another temporary head of MPI, and then Richard Spencer took over, and he was the editor of Tacky magazine, a kosher online webzine. Yeah.
Like tacky, like as in a little bit low.
No, it's kind of TAKI. I don't know what it stands for.
Oh, just a moment.
I think it's short for a Greek name, Takopolis or something like that.
Hey, just a moment. We'll be right back.
Okay.
Sorry, just a moment. There's a bit of a commotion. Just a moment. I'll be right back.
No problem. Coffee. And talk about Spencer's position when he comes back in relation to Gottfried. It's pivotal.
All right, sorry about that.
No problem. So Richard
came in and she hit her shin and she's crying.
Oh,
so okay, yeah, sorry about that. Yeah.
Boo boo.
Right.
Yeah. Oriental kids are so cute. I know some people say the black baby. To me, they're so cute. Anyway, I know it's. Anyway, Richard Spencer becomes the head of NPI and he's editor of Tacky magazine, where Paul Gottfried is writing, and kosher friendly, of course, because it's a kosher magazine. And Paul Gottfried, of course, he's getting the heebie-jeebies as a kosher guy with all the backlash that he sees coming for those three things that it said, like the culmination of the Austrian school boom bust cycle, the reaction to Frankfurt School political correctness, and also the reaction to the neocons. So he needs to reinvigorate the moribund paleocon false opposition. And so how does he do that? Well, you got to rebrand it the alternative right and get spunky right wingers on board. And that useful idiot, of course, is Richard Spencer. And because he's a blue blood and has that privileged position, wants very much to believe in the greatness of his wonderfulness in objectivist terms. Perfect, right? So he'll be a right winger, head of the alt-right and leading the way for this big tent. And the enemy will be the left, a characterology of the left, because, well, I mean, if European peoples, for example, and others, for example, see who's in power and what they're getting away with, they're going to, if they get a left idea, if they see, like I do, the depth grammar of the left, what holds true cross-contextually, that it's a matter of unionizing our people, because that's how you take on despots and tyrants or elitists who are exploiting your people. You unionize, and you form coalitions. This is a function of the left. You advocate, you organize, and you advocate for your people. And you'll notice the rise of the term social justice warriors, as if that was a bad thing at that time too, right?
Right.
So like, no, we don't want social justice. We want the kosher folks to just stay up there unchallenged, right? And it's also stupid when you think about it. It's amazing that people have bought this, but they have, but a confusion that they maintain, and they always maintain, is that the left is synonymous with liberalism, when in fact they're opposites. And then even like a practicing traditional Marxist will tell you that they're up. See, because when you look at the Debs grammar, and it's a matter of unionization, you're either in the union or you're not. So that's conservative. You're conserving what's in. It's the opposite of liberalism. People want to open the boundaries, scab the boundaries of the liberals. Okay, so they're the enemies of the death grammar of the left. Now, but in maintaining this red cape, this misrepresentation, this characterology of the left as the enemy, they want to separate out. But here's what right wingers do. Now, right wingers are about truth and objectivity and facts and principles of God and laws of nature that can't be violated, and the left doesn't want to deal with that reality. They're also the left, never making the all important distinction, and never saying. And I finally brought GW to silence because he's super resistant, remains so, to the idea of left ethnonationalism. He still wants to identify as right. Now, when you're talking about when you have your skepticisms of unionization, are you talking about a unionization, for example, of English people as a nation? And you just silence. No, you're not. So our left would be a unionization of our people, and it would not, in line with his characterology that they're all, whether it's whoever it is, Millennial Woes, Rams Paul, run down the line of dissident writers, they're all saying that the left doesn't deal with, facts, objective truth, nature, moral principles, that sort of thing. Our left, as conducted properly in white postmodern terms, would, of course, adhere to these things as crucial feedback against the calibration, which is our union, the union of our people. This would be the implementation of the postmodern project as it was supposed to be, in defense against modernity's universalisms and ravages of cultural, group distinctions. Now, so in that postmodern term that begins with Vico and then moves through Nietzsche to Heidegger, it's also called the hermeneutic turn. But yeah, like I said, it would be its mandate is anti-Cartesian, whether it's through emergentism or hermeneutics. It's to bring us back from the Cartesian estrangement back into Aristotle's position of centralizing our worldview through our people group and making that the most relevant concern, not pure objective truth. It's not normal to go around saying what I care about is the truth and objective truth. It doesn't matter if it's good for me or my people or just whatever's it's ridiculous. Right. What we care about, first of all, is our well-being, the well-being of our people, and then, of course, it has to be consonant with nature, the facts, truth, moral principles. Right. And then we can structure that accountability through unionization, so social accountability and correctivity and homeostasis, and then we can, if you want to be good and concerned for other human ecologies in the world, then we would also be in position to coordinate with them, because we would be responsible of our own. We're not just random universalistic blather. But it's important that I stress that we are not. It is this, what I'm calling left ethnonationalism, is not turning against objective truth. It's just that it subsumes that as feedback against the basic calibration of our people group as central, first and foremost. Like, I like drawing upon looking critically at Maslow's hierarchy. You wanted to start with food and biological needs as the first need and concern. Well, really, you're not going to have food and biological needs as a baby unless you have parents, and they're not going to be able to feed you unless they have a certain amount of cooperation with other people of their own. So really, the social is the first thing, not these. That's the first prerequisite. And this is a correction that's got to go on. And Aristotle, by the way, would say the same thing. This is not like an alien concept. This is removing the alien concept, this kind of modernist affectation of Maslow, and returning more to Aristotle's notion of self-actualization, and then moving further to a white postmodern turn of it into a looking after our people and a securing of our borders and boundaries for once, which is everything that the kosher folks try to subvert, even just out of unthinkingly. Yeah. I mean, like this. I don't know. Are you familiar with Kaufness, Nathan Kaufness, this guy who criticized Kevin McDonald?
I've heard the name. I've never read anything by him. No.
He's got an interview on Colin Waddell's latest site, and he uses his logical abilities to parse some ostensible mistakes in McDonald's thesis of the kosher folks as a group evolutionary strategy. In one example, for example, McDonald says that there are lines from Marx that he was concerned with kosher power and influence somehow, and it was a mistake in that there wasn't maybe this line, and actually Marx is quoted saying a lot of things that are even anti-Semitic. But it doesn't even. My point is that it doesn't even matter, because he was, even if unconsciously, Marx, that is to say, acting and promoting a program which would open up the boundaries of European peoples and, provide a way in, infiltration and of subversion. And this is a part of that system, his system, and whether he's conscious of it not, like a lot of it happens unconsciously. But I don't even think that what Paul Gottfried is doing in insisting that the left is the enemy, and that the answer for European peoples is to defend their beleaguered Christianity, which really he knows is puts them under Abrahamic jurisdiction in the end. Kumiko wrote a beautiful article about that, which I've got on my site. It's brilliant, talking about how that's the function of Christianity is to put us under the jurisdiction so that they can expropriate. I won't go into it now, but anyway, so this, it's an instinctive thing of damage control that Godfrey's doing, and maybe it's not just him. I'm sure, I know that it's David Horowitz as well, but it's a lot of people who are, and just basically the interests of their people, that they would want to cast the left as the enemy to white reaction, when in fact that's a red cape, because what we need in fact is what's beneath the red cape, what is in the depth grammar thought. Now, you began by saying that I'm up against a huge consensus as to what the left means, and the left being bad. I know that, but the thing is, this is one simple move that has to be done, that has to be challenged and understood, at least by people with enough wherewithal. And furthermore, I don't get this. Like, guest worker from Majority Rights almost tried to insist that I got this idea from Marxist professors who were training to become a left. In fact, I came to a criticism of the right through Tom Metzger, who was like one of the most famous of the 1.0 white advocates, probably second after David Duke, right? And he was always criticizing the right. Get out of the right, he would say. And he, in turn, came to the skepticism of the right through not only his experience, but also being prompted by David Lane, who is famous for having coined the 14 words. And one of his only interviews, he's interviewed by Meredith Vieiro for one of the news shows, and David Lane is saying, don't you dare call me right wing. Those people are crazy. And so with those clues, I've seen how and why that is, why it is that they are critical of the right wing identity, and taking it a step further, why it is the kosher folks want us to identify as right and the call us for our right, and why and now, since 2008, like I said, why they want us to be against the left, because that would be how we would organize ourselves. And, McDonald observes this too in his books, that, a lot of what they're about is subverting our organization. Unfortunately, McDonald himself is he's still the left. Yeah, I mean, being against the left, it sounds very sophisticated academically to say, "Oh, I'm against the left," and it doesn't sound good. I can agree to sound like you're against liberalism, which is really more the essence of our problem. Not more. Other people's left is liberalism for us, in that their unions, their coalitions, are trying to open our boundaries. Whether it's Marx's Union of International Workers and aspiring towards the withering way of the state, they're opening our boundaries. You hear Keith Preston saying how he was once a part of the International Workers of the World. Well, this is an anti-nationalist organization, and implicitly anti-European, at least in as much as Europeans are nationalists, right? And then the Frankfurt School, of course, is famous for having observed that the white middle class was not cooperating in the revolution, so they had to go from a class struggle into identity groups of non-whites and anti-whites. I lost my train of thought. They wanted these, and so yeah. Anyway, so at a certain point, people like Gottfried and Horowitz and and then and others, are going to be getting the heebie-jeebies, looking to do damage control. Gottfried's mentor was Herbert Marcuse, was famous, one of the most important Frankfurt School guys, who said that he was going to make Stalin look like a wuss if we want to see how to subvert Western civilization. With his what did he say?
No idea.
Polymorphous perversion and free love and all that. He was one of the most important guys in that whole thing of the sexual revolution. So Paul Gottfried, up close and personal view of how destructive these leftist movements of others, David Horowitz too, were, and how, of course, he's going to say there's going to be a backlash. So he has to try to get control of the right wing reaction, and that's what he's doing. And someone like Vivian Veritas too, pretty Jewish lady who was friends with millennial woes and trying to. Once the alt-right began to falter, say, oh, we should name ourselves the dissident right because it sounds cool. And here, let me come with my friend Rachel Haywire, another kosher lady, and tell you about how the left is no longer hip. I can see what's happening. It's clear. For whatever reason, millennial woes took umbrage to this while I'm diagnosing this. How dare you insult my friend Vivian Veritas? She doesn't have it in her to be malicious. Well, it's not a matter of her being malicious. It's a matter of her having her, being a part of her people's interests and wanting to do damage control, even if, like I said, even if not totally consciously, like Gottfried. And I'm not trying to make millennial woes into an ogre, but although I am calling to question his judgment, probably for his age and experience a bit, and in that, and also that maybe a bit of vanity there too, and wanted to go along with the more well-heeled path to having a prominent internet voice. I'm certainly not popular, but again, there's a reason for that. It's a marketing program, and white advocates are supposed to identify, if not as liberal, then as dissident right or alternative right, dissident right, third position, neither left nor right. Failing that, anything but left ethno-nationalist, anything but that. And going back to the alternative right, this was a big tent, in response to any potential left organization on the parts of whites to head it off. And the key to membership was that you had to carry some social stigma. You could be a Nazi. You could be, a whacked out Christian fanatic. You could be, a scientistic fool. You had to be antisocial in some respect, and then you could, have a tent in the tentosphere of the alternative right. And there was also, by the way, a kosher tent, which was more like the alt-light people, whether it's Lauren Southern or, like I said, your Canadian friend over there, Ezra Levant. I'm calling your friends facetiously.
Happy Canada Day, by the way. So Canadian, and tomorrow, Happy America Day, or Independence Day. Sorry.
Happy Canadian Death and Happy American Death.
Yeah.
I don't mean that I want them to die, but wow, those countries are in bad shape.
I tend to agree. So I just got one question here, and this is just maybe it's coming possibly out of ignorance, and that is, I understand that we're in a certain way sort of being herded into a corral, and that corral is one that's supposed to be, universally hated by everyone, etc., and that being possibly in some way calling yourselves right wing or something like that. But does it matter in the end whether we call ourselves or someone, even if you disagree on certain policies or about unionization or whatever, not about the racial unionization, I mean racial by the broader European peoples, but whether we call ourselves left wing or right wing? I understand.
Well, I mean, that's a little bit frustrating question, because I think I've been belaboring the point for
right.
How long now? Why I do?
Yeah, no. Well, I'm bringing it up now because
okay, I'll try to answer to the inflection that you're bringing to it.
Well, I'll just bring it just one point here, and this is, I don't know if you listen to him or not, and it doesn't matter. He's probably not maybe doesn't agree with it. You don't agree with enough points that he basically stands behind. That would be Thomas Sewell, and Thomas Sewell, the Australian, not the American.
Oh yeah.
Right. So he generally he'll just sort of blithely say the left or whatever, but at the same time, what really matters to him is just sort of, in his own way, the unionization of whites, and it's the general European peoples. Now, whether or not
I haven't heard him. I did hear him at a time, and I recognize him as high IQ and still detrimental for his right-wingishness. And
well, there's a lot of people that really, he's one of those characters that stick out in a way like a thorn, and the thorn can catch you and keep you in a good way. I mean, you can adhere yourself to it, or you can try to dislodge yourself from it, or you can find it to be like a painful thing. It's so I'm using the thorn. Maybe the thorn's not the right word to use, but he used a term, and I'm not sure I should use it necessarily, but it's a sneaky N-word. I don't mean sneaky N-word like certain people use to describe people of African descent, but sneaky N-word as in, people are going to call you the N-word, which is the National Socialist, no matter what you do. Once you stand up for
I hate that argument, by the way. But go on.
Yeah, no, but and it may be facile, but at the same time, it is true.
No, it's not. No, because they can try. For example,
well, you can argue.
They can try. No, they're not. They can't, and they can try, but. Now I've made sure to have a long track record. I have a record now for online for over a decade, being explicit against Nazism and in fine detail and important detail. So,
right.
They could not reasonably get away with calling me a Nazi.
But
first of all, I don't agree with that. And secondly, the second important thing is the inference from there. Oh, they're going to call you a Nazi anyway, so they may as well be one. Well, that's even bigger bullshit.
Well, for him though, it's not like I better
for
be
him. Yeah, but
call him me anyway. He embodies that himself, and he sort of no. I know that you're, and I don't want to get onto that subject, because I think that's not going to help either of us. But the point is this: that okay, here I'll take this outside of the perspective here. Back, say 7-8 years ago, I mentioned the fact to a friend that I think the overall mass immigration is just a bad thing. And at the time, it was very obvious from every post that I had on Facebook, from everything else, that I was basically a bog standard liberal, whatever you want to mean by that. And he, at that moment, because all I said was, I think mass immigration is detrimental to our societies, he said, "You are a Nazi." And I was... No. This is just a regular friend, and this has happened more times. Well, about 3 or 4 times between then and now. And I had not, and I still don't. I don't say that I am such. I don't. There's certain things that I really agree with on that platform, and there's certain things I disagree with pretty strongly on that platform. I don't call myself that, and I didn't call myself certainly back then, but I was, because all I did was oppose massive immigration. And this is, again, 8 years ago, and things have changed, or 7 years ago, things have changed so greatly since then that, and people are called that
I believe I have your point.
Yeah.
What I would say to that is that it's ridiculous to be called, the person who's calling, anybody who's calling you a Nazi for being against immigration is
ridiculous.
Is ridiculous, and not, and there are plenty of people who not only understand the immigration problem, but understand the machinations of other groups that are promoting that, who would never have been a Nazi in any way, shape, or form. That it's not necessary to oppose. Matter of fact, it's detrimental because it divides and conquers our people. So this is the kind of thing that why I look upon. See, here's the thing. Someone like Sewell, he's it's been a while, but I remember him being very intelligent, high IQ, and making brilliant arguments like a lot of them do. Same thing with Warren Belloc, when they're not wrapped up in the lack of perspective of their philo-Germanicism, because they're maybe quite Germanic themselves or whatever. They don't have the empathic perspective of others who have the same critical view without, and see that it's not necessary, that it's not only the H-man that saw the problem and necessarily had the solution, that there are other European peoples who are onto this, who are onto this as well and understand it as well, and maybe even have better ways of handling it. I would argue that there are. But here's the thing that I would say with regard to someone like Sewell is that I take, and a lot of people take, or appreciate ideas that some of these people are having, without necessarily thinking that you have to subscribe to them across the board. Especially this, I've always been frustrated by the they're going to call you a Nazi anyway, so you may as well be one argument. Just
sounds facile, but
well, it doesn't. It just doesn't. I'm never going to accept that. It just isn't true. I've never. There's so many. I don't know if you heard my last podcast, but I actually did a thing about this, about the frustration that I experience in having to deal with opposing Nazism 101, opposition to Nazism, because there's so many obvious reasons not to identify with that. And I could just go, I'm presented with offerings on my YouTube of, you see a Nazi war criminal and the kind of hideous crimes that they committed, but it was in the service of. This is why the last time when you were talking about, you mentioned the similarities between Hitler and Jesus, and I should have observed the most important commonality, which is that they're both right wing, and they're both right wing because they seek a pure warrant for action, which is either beyond the social correctivity of praxis in the case of Christianity, beyond nature, or within nature in the case of Hitler with natural fallacy. So it's beyond correctivity, so it becomes an over-the-top beast beyond control, and even to the detriment of German people in that case, because it's, like I said, it's beyond correctivity. It's pure might makes right at its basis. And so, I can understand, I totally understand how people become beleaguered by political correctness, by Marxism, by cultural Marxism, by the destruction, by the opening of their borders, and the recognition of who's behind it. But what they're doing, and this goes back to the days of Plato, is they are reacting to the skillful verbal abilities of the kosher folks to abuse, rhetoric and casuistry in praxis, so that they're desperate to defend themselves, white knuckle, to find some unshakable foundation. Like Semyagog is doing this. It's like, he's trying to get to some foundation beyond words that the kosher folks can't fuck with. So they say, well, this is what wolves do. They piss and mark off their territories, and this is not arbitrary at all. There's nothing arbitrary about it, and we have to get to beyond a verbal level to this kind of mood sign, and get away from this anthropocentric point of view. And we don't want an anthropocentric point of view. That's how reactionary he is to the kosher rhetorical abuse. Their skill. I mean, they are skilled. I mean, they'll just talk. They will just talk and completely glide over the most important issues that they are ignoring and misdirecting, like everything's normal. But they'll be talking. It's semi amazing. It's they're pretty good at it. Not that good, but it's like this is I could elaborate on how Hitler is reacting. Eustace Mullins wrote a book called The Biological Kosher, and they said that reacting to this is, oh gosh, Norvin had put it perfectly. I forget, but it's not. It's to get into a reactionary position is not the thing to do. That's what Hitler, in a sense, he was like trying to almost trying to do another version of what the supremacist imperialism that the kosher folks could be accused of doing. So it's like a viral reaction, Nazism, and into a kind of just a sort of a convulsion of natural fallacy, pure warrant. And when you remove that social corrective element and you pander to the lowest denominator of femaleness, for example, they're going to go along with it because there's at a base level, unsocialized as female creatures. They're just going to incite genetic competition, content that they, at the end of it, they're going to breed with the winner, whether it's Germans or not. They're going to ostensibly be breeding with the fitter male, and that's not something that is intelligent. That's not taking into account the history and the full breadth of our human ecology and responsible management of our human ecology and relations to other people. But a puerile female can be pandered to on that level. It's very powerful to her. That's why she's going to get behind liberalism. When the boundaries are opened, guys from everywhere are pandering to her, and she's inciting genetic competition. She's becoming a gatekeeper, only letting through in this disorder of modernity, because the classificatory boundaries are open. She's only going to let through liberal guys because they keep her in power, and her in the short term, she's got a big advantage. Of course, the society is going to fall apart around her, and slowly but surely, the chickens are going to go home to roost, and more women are going to suffer the consequences as well. That's starting to happen more and more. But to begin with, it's a big advantage for puerile females to go along with this natural fallacy, this kind of quest for pure objectivist naturalism, which is what lies beneath liberalism. This appeal to their license and licentiousness. So I'm gifted with this wonderful beauty and nature. So you're just jealous, and this is just the law. This is just nature, and you want to limit my natural endowment. And Hitler's here to see to it that you don't do that. And so let's go at it, and I'll breed with the winner of the war. Yeah. So I but that doesn't mean that someone like Sewell is not saying a lot of the things that are true and good. I doubt that I would convert him into someone who says, oh, yeah, maybe Hitler was mistaken. I don't even try. But one thing about the Nazi people, I hate the term National Socialist. It is a terrible euphemism that puts a veneer of respectability that they don't deserve. But anyway, because they are sort of more under the gun for their history, or feel it anyway. I don't think they should. I don't think they had anything to do with it, what prior generations did. But because they feel the need to study why there was such rancor against the kosher folks, you can learn a lot from them about it, and I have myself. So it's not to say that you can't glean. I learn things from all over the place, including from some things from Jews, some things from Nazis, some things from right wingers, some things from left wingers. But yeah, I mean, it's not that you can't appreciate some things that I have to say. Warren Belloc, he's a subscriber to Hitler, but he has some really good things to say, along with his wife Emily Yukas. To me, it's a shame, but because they don't see that there's just no way that some people are going to, some Europeans, you're never going to get unanimity on that score. It's always going to be a terrible divisive thing, and it's for no reason. It's not necessary to redeem Hitler. That's why one of the reasons why I was talking to this with Per, who understands me. I'm looking forward to bringing him here and hoping to smooth that out, because I'm not looking to lay guilt trips on people either.
Right.
I think there was one last thing that flourished that I wanted to add to that. Something to do with how you can learn from oh yes, you can learn from anybody, but the thing is that this is one of the criticisms. The first things that I'll ask of something, of somebody who's proposing an idea: do we need this? And well, in the case of Nazism, I would say not only do we not need it, but that it's detrimental to our organization and coalition building, but also just as an epistemological blunder from the ground up. It's natural fallacy, but and then the redemption of it. In order to redeem Hitler and Nazism, it's been a part of the program from the start to vilify other European nations. It's been integral. Say, to promote big lies themselves. Okay, I know that when Hitler said the big lie, he meant that the Jews were really a genetic entity, not just a religion. And he wasn't wrong about that, but Goebbels was wrong when he said that Poles, for example, killed 56 million or 56,000 German civilians in between the war. I mean, it's, you know, a 10 times exaggeration of an exaggeration of things that are not accounted for in their context.
It's kind of like the Catholics and the Protestants swearing at each other, fighting for.
Well,
in a way, like what I mean is, I honestly, well, but by the way, my wife.
Well, I don't think that's a good analogy, really.
It's not. It's not. I agree. It's not a good analogy. But the point is that we have two sides through history, and you can decide to take the Catholic side, you can decide to take the Protestant side, and there's still people that pretty vehemently fight against each other, despite the fact that not only are those two sides largely, or certainly back then, European, but two, they're the same religion. I suppose you could say it's a schism within one, but I mean, it's like, of all the things to murder each other over, base small differences within, your religious understanding of how the world works or how the cosmos works is a little bit insane. And so,
okay. I mean, we can agree that Germans and other European peoples shouldn't be killing each other,
right? Or lying about numbers, just to get to make people mad about the Poles, or to make people mad about the Germans,
right,
or to get someone on your side, especially in hindsight. But I mean, looking back, I think it was a different world. Europe still was primarily Europe.
I agree with you, and the people at the time had the idea that they were doing the right thing. I'm not looking to lay guilt trips on people of this generation for that. Maybe even if I should, I just I'm not interested in doing that. Yeah. I like Germans. I defend German nationalism. I want to defend all European people. Problem is, I don't attack. I've been attacked by the Nazi sympathetic brutally over the years, as you might imagine, and made probably even worse than by Christians. And it's it's totally wrong. For one thing, I don't go around to Nazi sites and troll them and try to tell them, oh, you're bad. I have formed a platform where, okay, this isn't something we do here, and this is a place for common people who don't want that. And it's not anti-German either. We are pro-German nationalism. We defend all European peoples. But what I wanted to say is that not only does not trying to redeem Hitler and Nazism require that you vilify the eternal Anglo and the Polak, and who can't understand why his nation should be taken away, and blah blah blah, or how oppressive it was that the Versailles Treaty drew the borders where it drew them and how it drew them. And by the way, it was actually quite reasonable in terms of the borders. But when you try to justify this stuff, and then you get into the Holocaust denial. I was saying, my first question is, do you need this stuff? Do you need Holocaust denial? And the answer is no, because, for example, if you take exactly what the kosher line is about the Holocaust, numbers, how it happened, and then you add for a flourish, sadisms that might not have even happened, and ghoulishness that might not have even happened. Does that does denying that help, or could you just as easily rhetorically say, well, look, if there was that much conflict and that much rancor drawn up between the kosher folks and the Germans, for example, maybe we can't get along all that easily. Maybe we need to be separate. You see, we don't need to even to deny that. in order to say, I mean, you can say, okay, well, they're using this to persecute us, but that's a different thing. You know, when we're talking about collective punishment for for misdeeds of prior generations that are alleged, that's even the UN denounces that, and you know, there I will defend German people, of course, as a people who deserve to live and to have their nation and their independence from persecution. But not only, I mean, it's like, here's the thing: is that, you know, some of, as I've been saying, America is such a German country in its white demographic, overwhelmingly German of extraction, but they're going to be susceptible to the formal market to these right-wing panderers who are the ones who are going to be telling them, you know, how great Hitler was and how the Holocaust didn't happen and all this stuff, to the extent that that point of view is overrepresented in these spheres. And you know, it can be very frustrating to me as someone who's been at this for decades now, evolving in my position, but, you know, evolving my understanding, to hear someone like academic agent act like he's presenting something new in saying that, you know, oh, we need to undo this this boomer truth regime, he calls it, of people who are trying to say that Hitler was the greatest evil. You know, this trying to soft pedal Hitler and to trying to say that he, you know, he wasn't all that bad or something, whatever, trying to relativize. This is not new within even the boomer truth, you know, the right-wing boomers. This is all they've been doing. There's a political, Per calls it a political correctness in WN circles, wherein, you know, outside of WN, it's the greatest taboo to be on the side of Hitler. Inside of WN, it's you know, it's almost a taboo to criticize Hitler, to say, well, you know, maybe Operation Reinhardt, i.e. the Holocaust, was a reality, and they, you know, and it's frustrating to have to feel like a schoolmarm and to feel like, you know, I'm the guilty one because I don't think that Hitler was great. But that's kind of the position that I'm in, and it's absurd. Like, again, because it's, you know, it's pretty obvious, you know, the examples of you know, of this not being something that anyone remotely normal should want to be associated with. No, if people want to say, no, what people should be doing, or what I could understand if they want to say, well, okay, yeah, this was something to be learned from. We don't want Europeans to be fighting, especially we don't want Europeans to be fighting each other and killing each other to the tune of 50 million, which is what happened. But just a second.
No problem.
My thought flew the coop for a second. But where'd it go? To the tune of 50 million, and it's not something that we want to. We. Oh yeah, okay. We can learn from it, but also it's understandable to say, if people want to provide explanations, to say, okay, it was a mistake, but, you know, here some reasons why this came about. There was some sort of justifiable reasons why people would understand that. So Poles were not purely innocent people. I'm not saying that. And nor the Czechs, and that these things could have been handled better. That the economic duress of Germany was pretty bad, and obviously there were things going on with the kosher folks which were not right in what they're doing. So there were reasons for this. Even if it wasn't perfectly formulated, particularly in Schmidt's friend enemies distinctions. Okay, that would be understandable, but that's not usually that's not where people are going. They're not saying like, okay, I just want to add a little explanation why this could come about, and I can agree that this is not the way to go. We want to cooperate as ethno-nations, not have this supremacist imperialist ideology lording this over and looking to make other people slaves and take their land and all that. Yeah, I could understand that, but that, like I said, that's not what's happening. It just goes full bore. The Nazis were right. Holocaust didn't happen. The eternal Anglo, Roosevelt and Churchill bad. Poles bad. Hitler good. And it just gets carried away because there's this currency that's circulating, like I said, from the right-wing boomer truth regime into a pipeline to the millennial and Xer bubbles. And that's the big market for someone like David Duke and so on. That's their audience and their market for Greg Johnson. And Greg Johnson's doing some really good work over there, but on that issue he's skewed. And so like I said, the identity as right wing is a part of the problem, because Hitler was right wing, and it contributes to that charmed loop of reconstructing this false currency, and without the correctivity that Hitler lacked in the social realm of praxis. So there was a place I wanted to go from there.
That's all right. Actually, my wife is calling me down to eat hamburgers. So
okay,
not
so
sure
like,
I can say no to that.
Don't say no to that. I have to arrange with. Will you have any time to talk on Tuesday?
Tuesday. So that's a good question.
Or Monday.
Certainly not in the morning. In the morning, I'll be out collecting wood.
Well, in your evening time.
My evening time, I might have time. We can put that on the table for now.
Okay. Well, I'll see first of all what's good with Per, but it will be our morning, so your evening.
Yep.
Yep. And then we can resume talking, because we all love each other. We all want the best. Per is the same way. Per's even more like he feels total affinity with Germans as well. He just doesn't. He's just like me. He's just like let's put the Nazi ideology aside. And I feel that he can. I understand that you're coming up through. You've learned a lot through those auspices, and some of the people are probably well-meaning, but it might talking with him might help smooth the way so that there needn't be this kind of any sort of less conflict in our being able to make this happen. That is to say, our coordination as European peoples. I mean, I guess you also have a complication in that you're with the Japanese, who were on the side of that too. So they would also maybe not be as, some of them not be as sensitive to the fact that Europeans were getting clobbered by this, and just like Claire Caw is not sensitive to this fact. You know, oh, just Hitler just wanted his place in the sun. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, the point is, it's history. If nothing else, it's history, and we want to. I want to advocate all European peoples anyway, and our distinct kinds, and I would bet that you can agree with that, and the Japanese as well. And so we'll try to see whether Tuesday or Monday is better for both you and Per.
Yeah, no, that sounds good.
Okay. Sorry for the ear banging, but
no,
it's
important. You know, you've thought about this sort of thing from your perspective in a way that, of course, since you're coming from a perspective that I haven't thought of in the same way. For me, it's a lot of listening in order to start thinking about what it is. But
let's hear. Give it a listen again if you have.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll have to catch up on the first hour or so that I missed on this.
There's also last show which I address
right
Nazism as well.
Okay,
but it's not something I like to talk about. I don't like. I don't.
We don't have to talk about it. We don't have to talk. And I think.
And I agree with that. I agree with.
I think it's possible that whatever inside or whatever side outside of whatever we're talking about, I may be on or not on. I think we can still talk about things that are more pertinent to us as as a people anyway. Finally, before I go, I just want to say, check out, I finally made a video. I think you might like it. You might not like it. It's on
okay, you can put it in the
link.
Chat.
Let me see here. Let me just see here. Yeah. Very short. It's 3 minutes. I'm trying to keep things short and sweet. I just want to hear your feedback for next time. Okay. Just a moment.
So I'll email you about an appointment with Per, and hopefully Mirth will be there as well, and say hi to your wife and daughter for me.
Yeah, well, I shall do that. I'll be very excited to finally speak to Per, and of course to hear you and Mirth again, if we can all coordinate this. So
that's great.
Thank you very much, Daniel.
I'm really happy to talk with you. I'm always impressed by it. Thank you very much.
It's always a pleasure. Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Good evening.
And thank you, everybody, for attending. And bye for now. Until either tomorrow or Tuesday, we'll be talking with Per and hopefully Snork again and Mirth. Okay, so bye for now. Thanks, everybody.